they say that truth is stranger than fiction, and everything I've seen in my personal experience has points that is very true. And I mean, a lot of times I'll be sitting around with my friends, and we'll be playing a role playing game, and we'll be thinking to ourselves, man, hey, this story we're creating is really really freaking cool. This is a great story. But I find the most interesting stories are actually just the stories about about just the real life stories of actually just us getting together and playing a game. Is the people I've role played with at a given time, especially in my circumstances, like whether it be you're like with a really good group who's just fun to be with, and you're just fun. You have a great time hanging out with these people, and telling wacky jokes. Or if you've done things like I've done, and you've not always role played with people you should be role playing with. If you role play with crazy people, yeah, you'll have an interesting time too. I find I got a ton of war stories of just strange like moments I've had playing role playing games, playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it's funny too. I'm a veteran. I'm Navy, and it's like again like I don't have really a whole lot of sea stories. I have a couple of it's like, oh, I went to this place. I went to Bahrain, and we went to Spain, and but I don't have a whole lot. I don't have a whole lot of really really wild sea stories. I had a couple, just the short amount of time I was there, and some neat things I did. But really, at the end of the day, it's like some of my wilder like war stories are really just me and a bunch of nerdy friends sitting around rolling dice. I would like to share with you today my best war story, which I call the Anubis incident. I actually tried recording this a while back with I was telling it to Oxentius and Nick and Snowman during the Horde of the Dragon Queen game. I think it was after we played a session. I think it was the second session. I was just kind of shooting the shit with him, and I told him the story. Interesting consequence is that this is actually tied very, very closely to the origin story of my character in that game, Nabu Totoro, the samurai from Earth. It's there's more to it than that. This story is actually very personal. It has to do with. I'm gonna get a little personal here with you guys about the people involved here. I will change the names of the people involved in this story for the most part to protect the guilty and the innocent, I suppose. However, there's two key figures in the story that, if you've heard any of my other podcasts, especially with Malmoto, Malmoto in particular knows a lot of these people, as does other Josh, as I call him. He's familiar with these people as well. Their names are not getting changed because fuck them. So, but they know they've and I'll probably slip up at some point. Or, if you can do the basic amount of attested words, oh, this person's that person. Yeah, it's not too hard. But just for the sake of everyone involved, I'm gonna change the names of the 4 people involved in this. The 2 most important people in this will be a lady we'll call Rachel, and a man we'll call Jared. And then the 2 who we'll say are the innocent bystanders in the story. We'll call Alex, and we'll call Bob. So, hopefully I won't fuck that up as we go along. So, alright, so appropriate amount of setup, and now to get personal. So let's talk about Rachel. Rachel was a woman I was friends with a little while back. I actually met her in high school, and we were friends for a pretty long time. We were friends, for on again, off again, we were friends for about 10 years or so. The main issue is I think we briefly dated. We briefly dated, and then she broke up with me, and part of the reason why I think we dated in the first place was she was getting over another boyfriend who, like a boyfriend of hers, who she's gone on about at length over the time I've known her, like every day, and like as far as I can tell, it still has not gotten over this person in the past 16 years. And this person is this person she's talking about is a mythic figure who I've never met, but I've heard a great deal about, and she never really got over that person, and she was actually going out with me and a couple other guys in order to just kind of to kind of build up her confidence and get over the fact that the guy dumped her. And so she kind of she went out with me for a little bit, spit me out, kind of broke my heart, and then like kind of wanted to be friends. It was like she broke my heart, and so I kind of like, I stopped talking to her, and then out of nowhere, like a couple months later, she called me out of the blue and said she thought I was a cool person and she wanted to be friends with me, and she wasn't really interested in me as a boyfriend material, but she thought I'd be cool as a friend, and I deliberately kind of left the situation because she'd already hurt my feelings and I wasn't cool for me. But I was young and stupid. I was like straight. I was like 19, and she was I found her very attractive, and we had a lot. We had a lot of interests in common. We had a lot just kind of physically in common. She got some Italian in her as well, like I do. So it's just there's some kind of chemistry there. So it was like, I was still kind of like, in my young 19-year-old head, it's like, well, friendships sometimes turn into a relationship. Maybe if I hang out with this person long enough and stay friends with this person, eventually a romance will blossom. It never happened. And I was very, the first thing we need to get out of the way here is I was young and stupid. And which I probably start every story with that. I was young and stupid. And so eventually, so for on again, off again, I was in this kind of friendship with this person, who we were friends and we would get along. We would talk a lot, but I was always attracted to her, and there would be periods where I was kind of hoping like things would kind of blossom into a romance between us, and it never happened. But at the same time, I quickly, well, not quickly. If it would have been quickly, I probably would have like, oh, this person's no good, and I would have just been done with it. But basically, Rachel is, it took me a long time to realize that Rachel is just a incredibly screwed up person, and she's basically, she's got a lot of problems, but those problems include she's nuts, and she's a basket case. Is primarily. Part of the reason why she basically uses people, and I personally feel like on some level she always knew I was still kind of like holding a candle for her, and so she could always depend upon me to come and help her out. There's so many times where some stupid drama occurred in this person's life, and she would need to move or move in with a friend, and I would be there with my truck and help her move, and that's the kind of putz I was. So right off the bat, and again, those of you who know me personally or have heard a podcast or two, you probably figure out who this person really is. So I actually, at various periods of time, I would stop associating with this person. I would eventually realize, yeah, this person's no good. Boom, I'm done. And I would leave and not talk to her for like 5 years. And then, again, I don't want to go too into it, but a personal tragedy occurred in her family. And so we reached out again, and I started talking to her again. And I tried like really hard, like the last time we were hanging out together, just to like, all right, this person's a friend now. This is we're not. This isn't a romance. We're gonna be, I'm this person's friend. I'm gonna be a friend of this person, and we would, I have had good times with this person. I've got a lot of she's like given me a lot of stuff. It's like she gave me like backup drives full of cool stuff, the things that she had to give away I'd gotten from her. So it's like, and I had some good times with this person. So it's like, c'est la vie, life. It's not all bad, but over and all, she's a very toxic person to be around. And for a variety of reasons. Like we've had some this lady is a conspiracy nut among other things. So there's we got into and this will probably spark like an argument in the comments section, but like, she would get it in her head a lot of times that like we would get into these bizarre philosophical arguments. She's a avid pothead. Very much loves the devil's lettuce, and I'm not. Due to I'm not for a variety of reasons. I like to drink. I like a beer. But it's like I've got a lot of pothead friends, and she's one of them. And we would hang around and have. If you have pothead friends, potheads will just sit around and just fucking talk for into the night about whatever things, especially philosophical things. We'd have these philosophical debates, and me and her would always clash on certain things. She's absolutely like we got into some long debate over like whether good or evil exists, and she's convinced that good and evil does not exist. In the end, part of the reason why is by doing so she accepts no responsibility. She like oh, good and evil is just a construct made up by humanity. Ergo, I don't need a moral code, and that's what I saw that through as. And I'd argue that even if good and evil are just constructs created by humanity for whatever reason, to control the populace, to give people a moral code, regardless, they do exist because they are ideas. And as it's an idea, it's a noun. It exists in some form. Maybe it's not physical, but it's an idea. An idea has substance. So, there's all sorts of nonsense. What was another one? There was another, like, stupid one. Again, you could probably figure out who this person is if you listen to a podcast or two. But we would go into... There's a lot of bullshit with this person. But, yeah, and I think it's also important to note that, like, especially given what we're talking about here, this person is a admitted schizophrenic as well. So, so that's our first setup is Rachel. So I'll get into more of the other players in the story as we go along. A lot of what we would do, like in my 20s, was I would just like hang out at her place in the middle of the night. A lot of times, again, I was a putz, and I could be counted on to help this person out if they ever needed help. So, like, a lot of times, like, Rachel would just, like, she would just, like, go somewhere, and I would get a call just out of nowhere. It's like, hey, can you pick me up and give me a ride? And again, it's like, the real problem with her is that she's a basket case. She uses people. And Malmoto can attest to this. Malmoto can attest that this is something she does. It's just like she just kind of uses people in her life. Malmoto was a roommate of hers, and like so he had to live with her for a while, so he can definitely attest to this. But like for example, there's a Wilski Road here in Tampa, which is a little kind of out of the way road that it's kind of it's near it's in the Carrollwood area. And it's just kind of it's out of like it's almost to like when you get to Anderson Road. For those of you who live around here, you probably figured it out. But Wilski Road is a little road in the middle of the woods, and she just decided to walk with her friend one day, just out off of Wilski, just started walking and talking, and then decided she didn't want to walk back. So I had to fucking go and find her on Wilski one day because she called me up and to track her down. So, but yeah, a lot of times she would just call me up and want to hang out. We'd go and hang out at her place for a bit, and every now and then we would do a role playing game. So one night we were hanging out, and she told me about this one location in the neighborhood that she thought was really weird, and that location was over by HCC, Hillsborough Community College. So let's talk about this location. This location is very important. So it's all built up now. It's now this area in question was a spot beside Hillsborough Community College that is now all built up and is part of a large kind of like swimming pool and gymnasium area. It's a big like gym that they have now in Hillsborough Community College. But before that, it was a bunch of just abandoned property. And there was an old hospital there that had been condemned and was just abandoned property. There was also a couple of trailers, like an old hotel it looked like, and an old juvie center. There's all this just kind of unused like property that looked kind of like almost like an industrial park. And next to it is a strip club slash sex shop called the Pink Pony. Um, and that another aspect of Rachel is Rachel would just occasionally just frequent porno shops because as you do, I'm not judging or that sort of lifestyle, but this is the thing she would do. She would just walk like, ooh, a porn shop, and go inside because that's normal when you're walking around, just like, oh, let's go take a look at dildos. Um, so she was familiar with the area, and it's like it's an area that's very desolate. There's just nothing around, and it's very unusually quiet in that area. At least it was. Now it's all the property's been bought by Hillsborough Community College, and it's been all that area. That old hospital has since been torn down and replaced by like a gymnasium, and is now part of the community college property. But especially it's unusual too because it's right next to Dale Mabry, which is the major like road going through Tampa, which if you know think about it, is usually very very busy. So me and her hanging out, and we're talking, and she starts telling me about this place, and like, this area is really really weird and interesting. I was like, I want let's go check it out. Well, like why do we want to check it out? Well, the other aspect and the other faucet of this whole thing is that both me and Rachel and the other person in this story, Jared, were for various reasons interested in the supernatural and the like ghosts and whatnot, and like mysticism and whatnot, and by like the supernatural I mean real supernatural. I mean ghost hunting. I mean like hanging out with people that claim to be witches and things like that. And it for me it was kind of a different path. I kind of I basically it's my microphone. Hi, hello, Blue Snowball. For me, I'd met I'd always been just very scientific and kind of a skeptic, and I had a friend in high school who claimed that they had interactions or had seen ghosts or things like that, and it just kind of prompted a just kind of a like a you know a personal interest from me. It was like wondering, well, you know, what if you know, I've always opened the idea that maybe there's an afterlife, maybe that ghosts exist or the supernatural exists. It's the type of thing that, you know, you just can't necessarily prove. And so I've always been kind of interested in sort of investigating it, and it's interesting. There's a lot of facets to it that I find are very very interesting. So it's like there's some of the things that I like. I like what SF Debris has said previously on his YouTube channel and on his own website. A lot of his videos have fortunately been taken now because he moved a lot of his stuff to Blip, and so I think he really just has to host a lot of this stuff on his own website. But for those of you who don't know, SF Debris is a really awesome. He's in my personal opinion, he's like the best sci-fi reviewer online. He's way back in when I used to watch Channel Awesome, like Linkara, highly recommended him. I think he was briefly on Channel Awesome for a bit, and basically he does really his specialty is Star Trek reviews. He does really good Star Trek reviews, and he just kind of reviews anything science fiction. And he has his own website. I'll put a link into his website in the description here. But yeah, he's in my personal opinion, he's one of the best sci-fi reviewers online that you can find. I think he was like I think he was talking about X-Files or something like that. But basically, it was like his personal feeling about a lot of the alleged paranormal phenomenon is that you run into like 3 different types of people when you run into this kind of stuff. You run into crazy people who don't know or can't tell what they're seeing at any given time. That's important for this whole topic. You run into hucksters. You run into con men who are trying to fool you and trying to trick you or whatnot. There's a lot of bullshit, and it's interesting how it's like some of these people like, you know, it's an interesting thing, like just kind of like from a criminology standpoint or kind of a psychological standpoint is there's this whole other layer where it's like they're trying to trick you or they're trying to convince you that they're special or whatnot, maybe to manipulate you. If you like, I think there's God, I'm spacing on the name. But there's like a lot of those ghost hunter shows, is like or that kind of stuff. And then there are people that genuinely. Oh, I remember what I was saying. So in terms of hucksters, you have people that are like genuinely trying to manipulate you, and then you have some people that believe their own bullshit, that believe that they're like feeling something or encountering something, but they're reacting to get attention for themselves. It's a very interesting phenomenon. And then you have people that genuinely believe this stuff or are open to the idea of it, and it's very hard to find that. And it's like I feel like personally I've encountered some things that are I can't quite explain scientifically that I would count as like sort of a paranormal phenomenon, and I'm not going into it right now. I don't want to freaking I personally feel that kind of information is very private, but it's like there are things that have happened to me that I can't quite explain or explain scientifically or I can't prove. It's like I felt this thing. It was weird, but I was the only one present, and it's the type of thing where there's no all you really have is my word, and that's the other thing too. There's really kind of no point in getting into it. So I always try to keep an open mind about these things. The other angle is, again, I'm also, for those of you know, I'm a big Red Letter Media buff, and Mike Stolkasa is fascinated by the paranormal and watched a lot of the Zach Baggins. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, he's fascinated by the paranormal. He loves like ghost adventures, and including Zach Baggins, who is a con man, who is a huckster. He had a video recently talking about like this one failed ghost adventure live event they did, where it's so obvious that they're all just kind of bullshitting everybody. And again, way back, 10, 15 years ago, I remember the big deal is, again, I'm a big fan of the Sci-Fi Channel and the Sci-Fi, or at least I was a big fan of the Sci-Fi Channel back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when they had shows like Farscape and Lex, the whole Sci-Fi Prime Hour, or block of television shows. And one of the things, I kind of noticed back then that they were getting way too into a lot of these ghost hunters kind of bullshit shows, and it all started with John Edward crossing over, and John Edward is a guy who that guy's a con man. I think that guy's a con man. It's very weird because it's like there's a fine line, and if you get to talking with me in any length of time about the supernatural stuff, we could have a very interesting conversation about it. And it's very interesting where it's like, I keep an open mind to this kind of stuff. I feel like there might be more, there's something going on that I can't explain, that's real, but at the same time, it's it's a very fine line to know what's true and what's not, and it's very easy to get taken advantage of. It's interesting for me because in my own personal journey, this all kind of started off as a curiosity, and it became more of a spiritual journey. It kind of got me back into religion, for lack of a better term. It kind of got me back to church at a certain point. That's another topic I don't want to go into. It's can't have that. We can't have me talking religion and it's like politics. Yeah, sure, I'll piss you all off and tell you about how much Trump sucks right now, but it's no, we can't talk about the G-Man. I need Oxenius and Malmoto here for that. I need my religious friend. As for Rachel's supernatural encounters that we would talk about, again, I ain't inside her head, so I don't know what she experienced, which was true, or what was false. All I can say is that she has admitted to me of being a diagnosed schizophrenic. And I feel like if that you admit to someone and you say you've been diagnosed as schizophrenic, that calls into question anything that you see that doesn't make sense. And she's told me many freaking stories about how, she's allegedly remembers doing somebody's hair and without having seen them for 6 months, and yet she distinctly remembers working on that person's hair, and it happened. And again, schizophrenic, and yet she doesn't seem to understand that she claims all this weird shit's happened to her, and yet it's yeah, but you're diagnosed as schizophrenic, which means you see shit that's not real. So yeah, maybe that has something to do with it. Before I go any further, I should point out that I am no longer friends with Rachel. Rachel's nuts, and maybe one day I'll go into more on I could go. I have many stories about all of these people I could go into, which probably should go into the war stories label. But needless to say, Rachel was not very good for me for a variety of reasons. And I eventually stopped talking to her, and I haven't looked back since. I haven't talked to any of these people though. I haven't talked to Jared either. We'll get into him in a minute. And I got a bunch more war stories about these people in particular. And I haven't talked to Alex or Bob either. Alex, I wouldn't mind talking to again. Alex isn't perfect, but he's not a bad guy. It's just, you know, I think the biggest problem is Alex still hangs out with Jared a lot, and it's like, I don't want to hang out with Jared. Bob is, I don't know if he and I are cool. It's like, I can say this, Bob's not crazy, whereas Alex and Jared, whereas Rachel and Jared are crazy, and that's, like, top of the reason why I don't want to associate with them anymore. Anyway, so we were into ghosts and magic and stuff and kind of the real world stuff and looking into it. And she got the impression that this location, next to HEC, this kind of abandoned hospital and whatnot, may have some sort of supernatural presence there. And I know what you're wondering, what the fuck does this have to do with role-playing? We're getting there. I gotta paint the picture for you. Again, truth is stranger than fiction. So she's like, let's go there. And so, yeah, this is what we did. You know, it's the middle of the goddamn night. And what we do is we just, like, yeah, fine, sure. We're 20-somethings with no lives. Let's just fucking go to this abandoned hospital and drive and hang out there for a minute. So she showed me the place. I drove her there, and we drove around for a little bit. I refused to get out of the car. Again, especially in the middle of the night, it's abandoned. It's an abandoned property. I didn't see any, but I'd suspect that there were probably some homeless living in the buildings there. You know, and it definitely looked creepy. I can't tell you whether or not there were actual spirits there or not. Again, it's got the whole place has a desolate feeling about it. That doesn't mean anything. There might have been something in there just kind of wandering around, but it was like, if nothing else, the place did feel creepy, and it felt like we shouldn't be there. So she showed me the area, and I was getting the impression like Rachel just really wants to frickin' like explore. She wants to frickin' go in there Scooby-Doo. And I was talking to other Josh about this, and like, yeah, she fucking wants to be a Ghostbuster. I don't know what's going on here. She really wanted to go all Scooby-Doo and like frickin' explore this place. So we came back. We went back to her place and we started talking about the area. And she was like, and we did a little bit of mild research. We went on the internet and looked up the location, and we found out that the hospital in particular was a tuberculosis hospital. And so we drew the conclusion, the very obvious conclusion, well, that maybe some people died there. So since it's an old hospital, and, you know, it's a hospital, people die at hospitals. It happens. You know, just statistically. So, yeah, so that was the thing. So it's like, you know, essentially, so we're kind of looking into this. We're kind of doing some mild research about this, and then finally she's all like, oh man, Eddie, I'm so fascinated by this place. I want to know what is the deal with this hospital? Why is this place the way it is? Hey, let's do a role playing game. And I'm like, come again? What? So what Rachel wanted to do was Rachel wanted to run a role-playing game, like at this abandoned piece of property, in order to figure out in order to figure out what was the deal with this real-world location, and that may or may not have ghosts in it, as if role-playing will somehow reveal ghosts or whatnot. So I'm like, that's a really dumb idea. And so I basically explained, okay, listen, Rachel, no, that's a terrible idea. For starters, we could just keep using Google. and actually do some actual research like an ordinary person and find out exactly what happened to this piece of property and exactly what the history is, and probably draw our own conclusions there as to what happened to this place. She was suspected like there was some kind of crazy outbreak of tuberculosis there, and that's what happened to the location. And to this day, I still don't know. Don't really care. But yeah, somebody probably died there. It's a tuberculosis hospital. What do you want? But especially like back in the day, it's an older hospital too. I mean, it's treatment for tuberculosis has gotten better, but it's like especially in older times, it was Victorian era, like 1 in 3 women I think had it. And I think the numbers are probably worse than that. It was like but yeah, so I mean, it was like first of all, if you want to actually figure out what the deal is with this place, a role-playing Dungeons and Dragons ain't gonna figure that out. Just do some fucking research like an ordinary person. Read a book, damn it. Check out a website. Like, do some fucking basic research like a normal damn person. And anything like using a role-playing game, which I pointed out to her as well, is not going to. I know, guys. I know it sounds like I'm speaking the obvious to you, but it's not obvious to Rachel. Rachel apparently needed an itemized list of why this is a bad idea. So, like I explained, Rachel, yeah, so also, anything we do in the role-playing game is going to be utter bullshit, because it's just you and me coming up with shit. It's me writing a larger story, or the two of us playing characters, and it's not gonna... The truth, whatever we come up with, it's not going to be the truth. It's not going to be what actually happened. Third reason this is a bad idea is this is some abandoned property in the middle of the night. We are liable to run into homeless people, crazy people, like thugs and robbers who want to rape and murder us and take our stuff, and not necessarily in that order. Or at the very least, cops who wonder why we're trespassing. So, like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Actually, one more thing I almost forgot. This hospital, this abandoned piece of property, was actually notable for some reason other than just being broken down and being turned into like a gymnasium. This actually, this series of abandoned buildings was actually used in a movie. It was used in the Punisher movie, starring John Travolta, that occurred in the early 2000s. What for those of us comic book fans know as the Welcome Back Frank movie. It was based off of Garth Ennis's run on Punisher, but it was actually filmed in Tampa. Starred John Travolta. I forget the guy who was playing the Punisher, but in it. But it's like best known. It's that movie that nobody likes to talk about any of the Punisher movies because historically they're not very good. I personally, and dude, I'll knife fight you over this. I personally think the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie is excellent. I don't care what any of you fucking say. It's actually what it's supposed to be. It's basically just Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher, running around shooting ninjas and criminals for an hour and a half. That's what you want from a Punisher story. And people like to hate on that freaking movie, but it's like, yeah, it's the Punisher running around shooting ninjas. That's fucking awesome. Whereas the other two are boring as sin. It's like the third one is notable for, you got Wayne Knight in it, you had Julie Benz, and allegedly the action in that one was very good. I didn't think the action was too good, but I like those two actors. Wayne Knight and Julie Benz are awesome. And the bad guy is Jigsaw, but it was that movie lost me right at the end, where it's that whole standoff at the end where Jigsaw's holding Julie Benz and Wayne Knight hostage. And I had a whole problem with that entire standoff. I feel like the Punisher just gone in there that was not the best way, I feel, dramatically or tactically to solve that movie, to finish that movie. That movie's weird too. It's just, I don't know. It's I feel like Warzone's bad, whereas this Punisher movie, the John Travolta Punisher movie, was done in an era where it was way before the MCU. It was way before Iron Man. It was just when, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and Blade and the X-Men movies were fresh, and they were trying to make other comic book movies. And in particular, it's right around the time the Ang Lee's Hulk movie and Daredevil, where we were part of what Marvel was trying to do was trying to show that comic books could be art, and that's why you had a person like Ang Lee making your Hulk movie. And personally, I really like the Ang Lee Hulk movie, and I really like this Punisher movie. because it kind of goes artistic. The problem with the Punisher movie was it's way too fucking slow. When a Punisher movie really should just be about the Punisher running around shooting bad guys. That's really what it should be about. But it has that really... You'll remember the movie, it has the fight with the Russian. That really awesome fight with the Russian is probably the best scene in the whole movie. So I believe the hospital was the rundown, crummy apartment complex that Punisher was living in that movie. Historical note, tangent, sorry. But it's important for that. Anyway, back to the proper story. Number 4 reason why this is a bad idea. If there are ghosts in this building and on this property, it's a really stupid idea for me and this woman to walk around role-playing and LARPing on this property, especially if we're trying to figure out what their deal is or trying to make contact with them, because all it's going to do is piss them off. All it's going to do is it's going to piss them off, and they're going to fuck with us, and we won't be able to sleep for a couple of nights. If any of you have had some similar misadventures fooling around with ghosts or what you think are ghosts or might just be your imagination, then you know that what this typically what this you piss something off, it fucks with you. It just fuck, that's really what it. My personal experience is you just there you go, can't sleep or just relax for a couple days. Shouldn't fuck with it. So I basically tell her this is a really terrible, horrible idea. I've got a better idea. How about I make a role-playing game for you, based off of this property that we've been exploring, and we'll run it and we'll tell a cool story. Because I was itching to role-play. I was just a lot of what Rachel would do is Rachel would call me up and want to hang out, and I would go over there, and we would sit around and talk for a while, and then we would just sit and do nothing. Because, and it's important to note, as I've said before, Rachel's a basket case, and she don't have no job. So we're just fucking sitting around doing nothing, and it's just alright, could we do something? And we definitely weren't fucking. We definitely weren't doing any of the fun shit. So it's could we just fine. If I'm gonna be here, let's do something. Let's play Dungeons and Dragons. Come on. So yeah, so it's I'll run a role-playing game for you based off of this property. I'll come up with something, and that's what we'll do. So I wound up creating a role-playing game I like to call Haunted, which I'm still pretty proud of. And Haunted is responsible for a lot of my a bunch of war stories, because from its inception, from this moment of, hey, I'm going to make a role-playing game based on this premise, right off the bat, this role-playing game was built on an unstable premise. On the premise of, I am hanging out with a crazy lady who wants to explore the paranormal by doing Dungeons and Dragons. So right off the bat, it was off to a zany start. So my premise was, the premise for Haunted was going to be set in the real world, modern day Earth, in Tampa, in specifically this area, in this little, we weren't gonna LARP it, we weren't gonna go down there personally, but we were going to do this tabletop, but it was supposed to be set in this little piece of property off of Dale Mabry, in between HCC and the Pink Pony, this little abandoned hospital, this abandoned hotel and juvie center. And my idea was, this is an area, this is a real area in Tampa that is kind of creepy and kind of weird and kind of haunted. And that there's weird, if you actually go onto the property, there are supernatural entities there. There's ghosts and monsters and demons and other creatures, and in general, supernatural creatures are drawn to this place. Kind of like the Hellmouth and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They're just kind of vampires and werewolves and whatnot. Magic users are just kind of drawn to the area, and are attracted to it. And my idea was that there was 3 malevolent supernatural entities that had basically set up shop in those areas, in those 3 of those major particular buildings, as a matter of fact. And they had and they were deliberately radiating this energy, drawing in more supernatural creatures, in order to capture their souls and just feed on them. I was very, as you know, I'm a big Lovecraft fan. I was actually very fledgling Lovecraft at this time. I was just getting I had just heard what Cthulhu was, and had no understanding of it. I was reading. I had not finished Stephen King's Dead at the time, but I was reading it. Because of that, I was just getting into H.P. Lovecraft. I don't know if I'd actually gotten the books for Lovecraft yet, but I had gotten the D20 Call of Cthulhu book, or I was like anytime like I got some free time, I'd go hang out at Barnes and Noble, and I'd go to their little comic book section and their sci-fi section, and their big role playing section. And it was there. The D20 Call of Cthulhu book was there, and I would read it and go through it, and it's like, oh my god, this is neat. It was like a good time for me. So one of my bad guys was a great old one. It was a great old, like an original great old one I created, which I called the Doctor, and he was some kind of elder god Lovecraftian entity that was deep underneath the hospital, slumbering, and had psychically reached out to the doctor, like one of the doctors that worked at the hospital while he was there, and taken over his mind and driven him insane, and led him to. My idea was that there was an outbreak of tuberculosis there, and a bunch of people died, and the reason why was because the head physician his mind was being taken over by this creature, and he was starting to do experiments, and he was actually kind of trying to make the tuberculosis worse. He was actually mutating it, and he caused an outbreak, which eventually led to his death and the deaths of a ton of people. There was an outbreak, and the entire place had to be condemned, and the disease had caused people to die. And once they died, their souls had been captured by the old one, and it was holding them there, and it was starting to draw people in, people that would get killed. And like the hospital specifically was haunted by ghosts and the spirit of the Doctor, who was now like a sort of Lovecraftian wraith. He was like I was like semi inspired by like Freddy Krueger and kind of like, for those of you like Yu Yu Hakusho, one of my favorite animes. During the Chapter Black saga, you had the doctor, the surgeon character. It was like that guy, but he was spectral in nature. He was incorporeal. He was a ghost that would ambush you and like slice you up with like scalpels and stuff like that. So and he had other powers too, because he was essentially an avatar or an extension of this great old one. He was like a pitcher plant fish, or like a pilot fish. He was the lure that was supposed to like that you were attacked, and then while you were attacking that, the real monster, the bigger monster, would come and get you. Who those of you know about Lovecraft and his wife's one short story together, that's kind of the premise of that entire story, is that it's a giant evil like pilot fish. That's the monster in that story. So I was inspired by that. I was this is when I was really getting into D20. This is part of the reason why I'm a huge 3.5 and like Pathfinder fan, and like is because that was the hot shit at the time. 3.5 and Pathfinder were the new hotness of D&D, and this is when the open gaming license was getting really big, and you had all these new kind of like games that were being made, like Star Wars was just made into a D20 game, and there's a Farscape one, and again, just like people were making their own D20 games that were compatible with D&D, and this is part of my attitude why the sky's the limit. They had all these great modules like the Epic Level Handbook, the Book of Vile Darkness, and the Book of Exalted Deeds. They were making tons of supplements for D&D, and so I was really getting into it. So a lot of my my role-playing experience kind of comes around this time, and I was really getting into it right then. So I decided, as a nod to Dungeons & Dragons, my other two bad guys would be a demon and a devil. I was specifically going like Blood Wars from Dungeons & Dragons. For those of you who don't know, in specifically Forgotten Realms, in Dungeons & Dragons in general, there is a difference between demons and devils in Dungeons & Dragons. Demons are chaotic evil, devils are lawful evil. Demons are more crazy and more likely to just tear you to pieces. Devils will tear you to pieces too, but they'd rather scheme and connive. And not to say a devil can't scheme and connive, not to say a demon can't scheme and connive, and not to say a devil can't rip your face off. But it's like they have a tendency towards more other like they have a different access of law and chaos. And demons come from the abyss, and typically they're known as the Tanari. and devils come from Baator or the Nine Hells. And they have a much more rigid, ordered structure. Whereas the Abyss is more just an endless pit of monsters and demons that are just howling chaos. So I had an idea that a demon had taken over the juvie center and a devil had taken over the hotel. The demon had taken over had possessed the warden of this juvie center, and was abusing the kids, the juvenile delinquents that would come in, and he would do terrible things. That he would torture and murder them, like rape them, do horrible things, and as a result, and then once they died, they became demons. They became like demon minions of his. So if you wandered into that place, you'd eventually get ambushed by like kids, like teenagers, like teenage thugs, who once you start fighting, they start mutating and twisting and turning into monsters. That place had monsters in it. I had this one really cool idea where there was for those of you who've played Silent Hill 4, there were these one monsters I called the wall monsters, which were they would literally just lurch out of the wall and attack you, and they were kind of red and very demonic looking with big claws, but they would also grab you and then suck you back into the wall. And if they sucked you into the wall, they took you to this other hell dimension that was all fluid and liquid, and they would tear you apart like piranhas or sharks. It was that was a cool thing I was very proud of there. And the demon warden was still there, and he was still occupying the body of the warden, even though the warden was dead now. And the warden's body had become like a Jason Voorhees-esque super zombie who had a chainsaw, but he could talk. He was like, this is my prison. You're not walking out, boy. That was a whole thing I'd come up with there. The hotel is something I lifted from not only a Metallica song, but specifically one of my favorite underappreciated role-playing modules, one of the earliest ones I ever looked into. It was based off of the song "The House That Jack Built," and for those of you who don't know, there's a bunch of second edition Dungeons and Dragons stuff that I think you can still find. It started off on really early internet. It's known as the Creator's Guide page. And there's a bunch of really good modules for second edition that people came up with. I first found out about this because I had a friend, Ryan, in high school, who one of the things we bonded over was role-playing games, and he was a big fan. He played a lot of D&D, and he taught me about the Sex Guide to Role-Playing Game, the very first one I heard about. And so, for those of you who know how much I love to torment on Sentius with Black Tokyo, Black Tokyo is not the first supplement for getting down and dirty in D&D. This has been going all the way back since second edition. The very first one that I know of is known as The Unlawful Guide to Carnal Knowledge, which was originally written in second edition on the Creator's Guide page, and recently got, as of a couple years ago, I'd gotten a 3.5 update, complete with classes and everything. And from there, then you have the Book of Erotic Fantasies, which is the 3.5. And they're really great too, because it's if it ever comes down to sex or pregnancy or ideas for an erotic game. If you want to write an erotica or whatever you want to do, whatever you and maybe just your significant other who happens to play your games want to write behind closed doors, these are really good for that. They're really that's why I kind of like stuff like this, and it's so that's why I like Black Tokyo, because Chris A. Fields, wacky dude that he may be, comes up with some really cool 3.5 D20 supplements. I don't know why he made Tournament of Rapists. I don't know why rapists and sexual predators need a source book, but Cosmic Toy Box looks really cool. It's based off of 80s cartoons. And Black Tokyo is fun. Black Tokyo is Hentai the role-playing game. You have the Book of Erotic Fantasies, you have Black Tokyo. In between, Spoonie recommended Encyclopedia Arcane's Nymphology Blue Magic, which is, as he pointed out in his Counter Monkey, if it isn't apparent, these videos are very heavily inspired by Spoonie's Counter Monkeys and pretty much anything Puff and Forest. That guide also has to do with sex, but it's a little more juvenile, and really all it has is a couple of goofy spells like ooh, enlarge breast spell, tee-hee. But that book's still fun. There is the Creature of Lust template's actually really cool in that. They have an ability where if everybody fails a fortitude save, they give off pheromones, and just everybody affected by the pheromones got to start having sex right now. It's that I want to use that in combat. And again, that's the thing, you can use this stuff in combat. And then of course there's the infamous Fatal, which is one of the worst games ever made, hilariously so. It's kind of awesomely bad, but it's fatal. Good luck getting fatal to work, and much less than dealing with the racist, sexist jokes and all the rape. Have fun with that, folks. We're still, one of these days we gotta try, like, one of my goals for this channel is one day I gotta get Malmoto and Xenius to play a game of Fatal with me, and we're just gonna try to run it. I'm not promising people we're gonna actually successfully play Fatal. I'm saying we're going to try. We're gonna like live look at the frickin' book and try to build a character, and then go from there. It's like it's gonna be. I'm not convinced we're gonna be able to get through it, but we're gonna try. We're gonna try. Yeah. So, but anyway, back to my topic. There's like one of the. Why did I bring up the unlawful guide to carnal knowledge? Because the creator's guide page is not only home to the unlawful guide to carnal knowledge, it's home to a bunch of other really awesome second edition modules, which you could very easily adapt to 3.5. There's a bunch of stuff. There's like a guide for Dungeons & Dragons Highlander game. So if those of you who love the Highlander movies, they have stats for you to build your own immortal. They had a guide to Star Trek, complete with like races and stats for Ferengi. There's stats for Q. It's great. There's like tons of cool stuff. There's a guide for technology. Two of my favorite things on the creator's guide page are the Bag of Wonder and the Bag of Beans, which are a bag of 100 random zany items. The Bag of Wonder are usually just kind of goofy, kind of jokey items, but like a couple things in there is like you can accidentally pull out a Terminator, a literal Terminator, and like a T-1000, and I think they even come with stats. It's great. The Bag of Beans, the Bag of Beans you have to plant in the ground, and it creates some kind of random effect. The Bag of Beans is usually more dangerous than the Bag of Wonder, but like those are my favorite like random little fun items. And you roll a D, like whatever they pull out, you roll a D100, you get something different and wacky. It's cool. I've been meaning to like dump that on Xenius or like Malmoto at some point, and just to use that for fun, because I've always wanted to use it, never had it. The Unlawful Guide to Carnal Knowledge has Cupid's twisted arrows, where they're these magic arrows that they have a different like random but kind of erotic effect on people if you use them. There's other fun things too. There's the Guide to Alcohol, the more or less complete Guide to Alcohol, which has the same attention to detail the Unlawful Carnal Guide has, but just to drinking and booze, and there's special like gods of brewing and stuff like that. And that one's really great too, because it has a bunch of subsections that are I think it's just all related to partying and different things you can add to your game. So there's like rules for drugs, there's rules for bowling, there's rules for comedy, which is more just a joke section, and then there's also like a tomato gruel recipe. So it's just everything you need to like stat out your pub. There's even a list of it. There's a guide to insanity or sanity, which is useful. It's one of the things I use for like if I ever, the reason why I like to use sanity points, even if I'm not using Call of Cthulhu stuff, is if for whatever reason someone goes crazy, well, that's one of my lists of various insanities I can pick from. It's like, you have this now. The Guide to Sanity has that, as does the Call of Cthulhu D20 sourcebook has, and Central Casting. Central Casting has a fun little list of insanities you can pick from as well. One of the source books in there is the Guide to Metallica. The Guide to Metallica is it's a campaign setting, which some of these old D&D players basically who were big frickin' metalheads made an entire campaign setting based off of the band and the songs of Metallica, complete with awesome spells like Ride the Lightning, which creates a phantasmal like electric chair that grapples you down and electrocutes you to death for 3 rounds. Monsters, like including the thing that should not be, the Master of Puppets, and there's this entire setting known as the Rock, and it's really cool. And I've already even in Metal Chronicles, I've even I've used a couple of characters from it. I'm still planning on using some characters from it. They have they have the Sanitarium. The Sanitarium is filled with characters from from the songs. Like the Harvester of Sorrow is a character in there. He's got stats. Ronnie Frown Ronnie Frown's in there. It's like there's all sorts of good stuff. So one of the locations that you have in the Rock is the house that Jack built, and the house that Jack built is basically, basically it's about the house the devil built naturally, but in the Guide to Metallica, the house that Jack built is an old creepy house that was built by someone named Jack, and Jack is people believe was a demon or a devil or something like that, and people that go into the house are eventually confronted by their worst fear. That manifests and torments them or drives them insane. It's one of the many things in the town of the Rock that drives people crazy. And so I decided that the hotel in Haunted would be the house that Jack built. It was going to be a hotel that, and Jack was still there. And Jack, I decided, was going to be a devil. He was a little more sophisticated evil. More of a classic, just kind of like, a devil. And the monsters, what haunted people there was people's worst fears would manifest and come to life and attack them. And that was my setup. And my idea was that, like, a lot of my, I let people, like, typically I let people play whatever the fuck they want. And including everything from what you're supposed to play in Dungeons & Dragons, from fighters and elves to RoboCop, because I'm Eddie, I'm the Dreadpirate, and I'm fucking nuts, and I let people play things they shouldn't in a role-playing game. I'm Eddie, and I want to roleplay a fish. And I can on Evo for the Super Nintendo, so in your face. And a lot of what people picked... Again, this is also a time when Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness, the old World of Darkness, were really big. And we were all vampire fans. I'm still a vampire fan. I'm still a horror fan. So that's what we did. We played a bunch of, like, kind of... like vampires and whatnot, and they were supernatural creatures that were drawn to this location because of the energy that was radiating from it. We had a bunch of players play this game. A couple characters died. A couple times people quit whatever they were playing and played something else. And we had a couple people just kind of come in, play for like 5 minutes, and then leave. And at some point in time, I'll probably go into more detail of the events of Haunted and the various characters we had here. But for the Anubis incident, I need to only tell you about a couple of characters. So let's start with Rachel. Rachel was playing a vampire character of hers called Aluma. Aluma was a vampire, about like a 500-year-old vampire lady who was just a redhead, and she specialized, very, very attractive, classic gothic vampire lady, Anne Rice-looking type of lady. She was... Her main powers as a vampire was she had fire magic, which she was capable of using, and she wasn't immune to fire, but she was immune to like her own fire, the fire that she created. And she also had, I think she had some minor teleportation abilities. She could like disappear and reappear in various locations. Good old Dracula type of stuff. And her other thing was she had the ability to turn into cats. She could shapeshift into cats or tigers. She had power over cats. She could turn into cats. She couldn't summon cats, but she could turn into kitty cats. That was like her chosen animal. Once again, I did the shit that you're not supposed to do as a DM, but where I really secretly wanted to play, so I played my own characters. And this time I created another one of my favorite edgelord characters. Again, another dumb, old, Eddie's Young and Stupid role-playing character. I called this guy Hunter Moongazer. I don't care. I'm proud of that name. Fuck you. Hunter Moongazer was kind of like a hunter. I was like, my idea was he was like a Hunter the Reckoning sort of character. He was a cop. He was a cop that like wound up going on a couple cases and encountered monsters, and so he left the force because he kept on complaining to the police chief about monsters, and they thought he was nuts, and he became like a demon hunter. And so he became like a hunter, demon hunter type of character. And then over time, he also learned, he traveled to Tibet, and he got involved in the occult, and he learned magic. And over time, he eventually, turned into a werewolf. And I think, my idea was, I used, twin katanas and a shotgun, and typical edgelord character creation right here. And the idea is, I went to Tibet, learned a little bit of magic, and he was basically kind of leveling up as a sorcerer. And in particular, he had the ability magic weapons. So I could basically enchant my shotgun so it could hurt supernatural creatures. I could enchant my sword so it hurt supernatural creatures. I eventually developed like a spirit sword ability, where I had like even if I'd lost my katanas, I could create a sword of like energy based off of my soul that I could use in combat. He eventually learned that he had like a Lycan bloodline, that like he had a connection to this prior, and that basically he was like his ancestors were like werewolves, and he was able to tap into that, and he became a werewolf on top of that. And finally, he wound up discovering a spell where he could temporarily, for about 10 minutes, turn himself into a vampire. So, classic Munchkin, mid-maxing, Mary Sue edgelord gameplay right there. I've done it too, folks. Don't feel bad, my friends. It's okay. It happens. We're all brothers, man. We all make bad characters. It's like so. I'm proud of Hunter Moongazer. As dumb as he is, I'm proud of him. And it was and like basically he could temporarily. I like this vampire ability because like the idea. Again, I was a giant World of Darkness fan, so it was like he could temporarily turn himself into a vampire, but he was a werewolf, so that means I could temporarily turn myself into an abomination, which is a vampire who like a werewolf that's been sired and turned into a vampire as well. It's a werewolf and a vampire at the same time. Like incredibly powerful but hated by both vampires and werewolves alike. Michael Corvin from like Underworld, Scott Speedman, fuck yeah. That was Hunter Moongazer. That was my premise behind him. So let's talk about. I don't want to go too in detail about there's no real reason to go into too much detail about Alex or Bob. This is not a story where they look terribly bad. So, and I don't really want to make them look bad anyway. But basically, we'll go into who they were playing. Alex really likes spellcasters, and that's typically what he plays whenever he plays Dungeons & Dragons. He loves him some spellcasters. So he decided to play a lich, and his idea was it was like a modern day lich. It was like an ordinary. It was a modern day wizard or spellcaster that liked to had modern sensibilities. He very recently, was within like 10 years or so, had actually turned himself into a lich, and as a result, he didn't live in a crypt or anything like that, or wasn't locked in his freaking tower all day long, or wherever he did research on. He still got about town, and he took care of himself, so you would never know that he was a lich. The only way you could tell was if you noticed close enough, he didn't breathe, and his skin was slightly pale. But he was a lich. He was an undead spellcaster. He had a very nice, very nice little Italian suits and what that he would wear and whatnot. But he was a powerful spellcaster, and he was drawn to this place as well. Bob was kind of hardcore D&D, and that's a lot of what he knew, and he wasn't sure what to play. I think it was one of the first times I tried running like a modern setting for him, and so he wasn't sure what to play. So he decided to play a gold dragon he called Thaumaglorious, I think was what it was called. He played a gold fucking dragon. A gold fucking dragon, a D&D creature in a modern setting. But it's a D&D dragon. And so D&D dragons have a lot of spells and magic. And so naturally, he can make himself, he can cast a spell and polymorph himself and look normal. And that's what he did. He just looked like a normal guy, but really he was a gold dragon. And when it came down to fighting, boom, he's a gold dragon ready to kick your ass. And so he was drawn to the place. And so we sort of all these characters wound up like investigating the property around the same time, and sort of found each other and kind of teamed up to try to figure out why this area was so heavily haunted, and what was the forces at work that was holding things here. And now we got to talk about Jared. Before we get into Jared's character, let's talk about Jared for a minute. So, much like Rachel, Jared's fucking crazy. But Jared's like a little bit worse off than Rachel is. Again, Malmoto knows Jared as well, and they've hung out for a little bit. Malmoto has nothing nice to say about Jared. Jared's a massive douchebag. There's a lot of problems with Jared. He's manipulative. He likes to screw with people, and at the same time, he'll cry river about like how he's been had a rough time, or he's had a crappy upbringing, or he's been victimized by someone, which happens in this story. But at the same time, he literally uses people. He literally is very, very two-faced. He'll go back and forth between. He'll manipulate people, and and play one friend against the other until eventually he has no friends. Jared's an asshole. And he's fucking crazy. Malmoto could vouch for the fact that basically he tried to sleep with his girlfriend. Yeah. So Jared's a dick. And again, much like Rachel, you can probably figure out who Jared is. If you go back and listen to some of our old podcasts, where I was a little less, where I wasn't using aliases. I recorded this once before, and where I was I didn't use any aliases, but I'm just thinking, it's probably the right thing to do. But if I slip up and you figure it out who these people are, well, it's important to note that like Jared is one of those people that I encountered that I, much like with Robin, we were interested in the supernatural and whatnot, but Jared was one of those people that definitely falls into either the crazy category or the huckster category, but he's definitely a huckster that believes his own shit. It was one of those moments where I started talking to somebody about this kind of stuff, and he started telling me about experiences he's allegedly had, and it was like it was a rabbit hole. It was a rabbit, me and Malmoto like to talk about rabbit holes. It was a rabbit hole because I was trying to be open-minded. I was trying to be accepting and taking this guy's word for it. Okay, well maybe this is happening to this guy, and before you know it, you're going out of your mind. You're going out of your mind trying to make sense of these lavish and ridiculous fucking stories that this guy is telling. And this guy, again, in true scumbag fashion, this guy's just crossed a lot of lines with me. So around this time that I knew this person, my mother passed away. And he came into my work at one point, like, while I was still coping with that, and claimed that my mom's ghost had talked to him. Which was very fucked up and disorienting for me to hear, at that time. It was not the type of thing I needed to hear. I was grieving. I was going through a lot of things like that, and it started throwing. It started making me think for a minute. Well, maybe did this happen or not? No, it didn't. This guy's fucking crazy. And I have another story about this guy. I have a lot of stories about this fucker. A lot of warrior stories. I once created a character in a role-playing game that me and him were running. That I was running for him. That was an NPC that wound up being like his character's girlfriend, and then he wound up like claiming that there was a spirit following him around in real life, that was like that he was basically dating. This guy was dating an invisible person for a minute, a person who is not there, and let's be honest, is not a ghost, is just non-fucking existent. He fucking did this. And on top of that, it was driving me out of my mind because he claimed the name of the person was the name of the character that I'd made in a role-playing game. So it's like, okay, so this person's name just so happens to be the name of a fictional character that I created. That I created for a role-playing game. That's obviously fiction, but that's what this character's name is. Fuck you! And it was just like, you're full of shit, you're fucking crazy. Yeah, so I definitely don't hang out with Jared anymore. Jared, I had to distance myself from. Because he's fucking nuts. He's also a scumbag. He's also an untrustworthy, backstabbing scumbag. And if there is a supernatural, if there are ghosts and things we don't understand, there's bad stuff on him. There is bad stuff on him. Whatever senses I have, there's something ain't right with that guy. So yeah. But that's him. No, he's fucking nuts. He's fucking nuts, man. Yeah. So like the only good thing about hanging out with Jared was because he was crazy. He was a very good. He was at least a decent writer. And I actually had some really good times role playing with him. He came up with some really cool stuff. He came up with there's a couple of role playing games in particular that he ran that were a lot of fun to go through. He did There's a really awesome supplement of 3.5 D&D called Sandstorm, which is entirely based off of a desert environment. He ran an entire desert campaign that was very well done and very enjoyable to play. There was he made a role playing game based off of the Magic the Gathering Ravnica set of cards, and which was a lot of fun to play. That was neat. We have what we call the Dawn of the Dead game, which is one of the better role playing experiences I've had. Which I'll probably have to talk about in some kind of future installment of this. Where it basically, our premise was, around this time, Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead had come out, as well as Shaun of the Dead had come out. So, we both watched it, we loved it, and he's also a huge fan of Land of the Dead. So he decided to make a zombie apocalypse game, which was set in Tampa, in the real world, and the catch was we had to play ourselves in a zombie apocalypse, which is something I had never played myself in a role-playing game before. Just me, just Eddie. And it was a lot of fun, and it got really crazy. It lasted about, like, it like kind of spilled into like the original game was done in like 3 chapters, where like his first idea was his first session was going to be like classic Dawn of the Dead, classic Romero, like, you know, Night of the Living Dead universe. The Dawn of the Dead remake with the runner zombies. He came up with a lot of cool ideas for like mutant zombie creatures and stuff like that. He came up with a lot of cool shit. Then it was it would spill into Land of the Dead, where the idea is the zombies were becoming sentient, and then there was an idea where magic was slipping back in the world, and there was a larger kind of magical horror plot as to why the zombies were rising. It wasn't necessarily a zombie like a virus. It was a virus, but it was a magical virus. There was necromancy involved, and powerful supernatural entities were involved. It was very good. And then like another thing that happened like at the end of that game, where we then all ascended to godhood. There's a lot of things that happened. Like I played myself, and then I got killed, or I lost my character sheet, so I had a couple of different characters in that. Like I think like in addition to myself, I also had like a Nazi. I created a Nazi character. I created like a Nazi SS like soldier, because I was also playing Blood Rain at the time. Blood Rain's a great game, by the way. So our idea was it was a Nazi member of the Guggenheist Gruppe from the first Blood Rain game that had like gotten sucked through a time portal. And he eventually, like, he reformed. He became a good guy, but I still had my guns. And he became like a scion. He became like a psychic. I made a Moravian from Modern D20, which Moravians are based off of the island of Dr. Moreau. They're people that have been spliced with animal DNA. And I created this character's name was Flip. He was like a government Moravian special agent who'd been spliced with dolphin DNA, and he looked human, but he could breathe underwater like almost indefinitely, and he had like echolocation abilities and guns and stuff like that. And then okay, I think I lost my character sheet for me. I played those other 2 characters so they joined the party, and then I actually did die on one of the missions and then got resurrected. And then the other fun thing about that was like I got some really good stories for this one. I don't want to go into too much. I'm already freaking tangenting hard, but I got like he eventually, like in the supernatural part of the game, we wound up getting superpowers, and like I got the ability, we could have whatever power we wanted, and I got the ability to turn into anything. I became like the ultimate actor. I had the ability to transform myself into anything I wanted to, while maintaining my consciousness and sentience, and having the ability to turn back. So I basically started turning into comic book characters. I started turning into like all sorts of characters, stuff like that. And I had like one of my best role playing moments was from that. Like one of the coolest like checkmate game master. Hey DM, checkmate like moments where I like fucking like just I totally beat him was like right there. I gotta fucking talk about that. At some point in time, I'm gonna talk about this game. It was really good. But then after the game happened, then we ascended to godhood in that game, which is also something I never had happen to me. I'd never ascended to godhood in a role-playing game before. And that was my first game where that happened. And not only that, I didn't just ascend to godhood. Eddie, became a god. I became a god. And it was like, that was great. And that had never happened before. And then we had like 3 games after that, which was all about us being gods. And there was like one where there was like a war in heaven. There was a second game where it was based off of Silent Hill, where we were like, the idea was we were gods playing D&D with each other, and it's like, okay, you're gonna go down and take on a human form, but I'm gonna put you through like a Silent Hill scenario. And again, Jason's crazy, so his Silent Hill was all about his own personal demons, and it was a very effective horror adventure. And he did a very good job with it. But a lot of his own personal bullcrap was in that. And it was a good game, but it was also disturbing because it was like, oh god. And then the last one, where it was like the entire universe was falling apart based off the stuff that we had happen. There's a lot of crazy side adventures in that game, and then I think I didn't just ascend to like, okay, in that one I became like a super god. I became like god sort of kind of. Like at that, like me and like a couple other characters in that like ascended, like became over deities. For those Dungeons and Dragons, over deities. Over deities is more of the modern Christian concept of God, where God is in the bunnies and in the sun and in the hearts of children, and he's a vague benevolent force. It's like the modern Christian ideal of God instead of a like a bearded man in the sky. That was so I became like an over deity of good at that. It's one of the coolest things that happened to me in a role-playing game, and I owe that to Jared. That was really cool. It's just, I had a good time playing that. It's just, he's fucking nuts, you know? There was another one, too, where he had this idea where a bunch of random characters just kind of wound up in a village and don't know how they got there. And as they start it's like a big horror scenario where a lot of times they have it he allowed you to pick like a random character. I think initially I started off as Colossus. Like from the X-Men, and I wound up in just some kind of like random location, and and then as time went on, you think you're in like a fantasy setting, but like you don't know where you are. You're like in you're like in a forest of hills and mountains, and there are orcs and other monsters nearby, and it appears to be like some kind of fantasy setting. But as you go along, like you discover that things in this world are much more lethal and fierce and horrible. And I think the idea was that in reality we were all inside of a great old one. Or an outer god. We were actually there was an entire world and an ecosystem that was inside this great old one's body, and we were stuck in it. And it was also like super lethal. Like pretty much, I had like a bunch of characters died through that one, especially because he was turning like the difficulty up to like 11 on that one. And there are a couple other like little random games that we had there. And I think he tried doing like a Kingdom Hearts game for like 5 minutes. Where I was playing a bad guy. That was kind of interesting. There was a couple good ones. It was so Jared, if I could say one positive thing about Jared ran some really cool role playing games. He's fucking crazy, and he's a jerk, and I don't want to be around him anymore. But he did run a couple cool role playing games. So there we go. That's the setup for Jared. So what was Jared playing? So Jared was playing one of his vampire characters called Dralnu, where Dralnu was based off of so I was mentioning in one of my recaps recently about the vampire that nobody has ever encountered in City of the Spider Queen. Alright, so like Jared was like one of the few people that Jared was one of like the reasons why I knew about like that vampire encounter, because like I played City of the Spider Queen with Jared and Alex and Bob, and they had like one of the things they had run, like I first played City of the Spider Queen through them. That's how I found out about it, and it's still one of my favorite D&D modules. It's still very, very good. I played it with them, and like he was going on and on and on about this vampire that was like right at the beginning, because he wanted his character turned into a vampire. So he wound up figuring out a way to get Chahir the vampire to turn him into a vampire. And that's the thing. It's like, and I've talked to other people who've run City of the Spider Queen, and to people that know him personally, the only reason he was able to, the only reason why their group ever encountered that vampire was because Jared found out about it and deliberately looked for the guy and tried to, and wanted to get sired because he wanted to play a vampire. And it's like it's one of those things where it's again it's like if I were running this game, it's like just let him play a vampire. Who cares? And again, everybody else I've run City of the Spider Queen walks right past that fucking mausoleum. Oxenius did it, Porter did it, Carver did it. Nope, not a single person I knew from Great Lakes ever fucked with that mausoleum. My new group, team Overwatch, team Beachcomber, they knocked the door down and friggin' ignored it. No one has ever fucked with that thing. The only person I ever noticed did it is Jared. Jared fucked with it because Jared wanted to be a vampire. So, and I think like he made his elf character Drownu. It was his original. That was Drownu 1.0, and the version he was having in this game was Drownu 2.0. And Jared doesn't play the most compelling vampires. He gets to be sexy, or in his head sexy. He also plays his vampires very arrogant and very, I don't know, for those of you who like the Cinema Snob and remember the Bruno Mattei show, it's like Ed Glazer talked about the concept of evil gay from Bruno Mattei movies or old Italian movies where your villain is like a Roman emperor who's all like, yeah, like the Volturi from fucking Twilight, who's just like, ooh, just evil gay. It's like, I'm gay, but I'm evil. Yes. Ooh. Ooh, I have a trap for you. It's like that. Yeah, just Bruno Mattei's direction for like his all the Roman emperors are always like, okay, all right, bigger, gayer, great, perfect. That's like, yeah, that's basically Drownu. Drownu was evil gay. There's other evidence to suggest that Jared has got some evil gay in him. I have stories about this man. So, Drownu 2.0, the premise behind him is that he is an 1,000-year-old vampire from ancient Egypt, and specifically he was a priest of Ra that decided to betray the gods and attempt to steal power from the gods. And so the gods cursed him and turned him into a vampire. So, for those of you familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, there's a concept known as an priest. An priest, or the are they're definitely, I don't think they have an equivalent in 5e. They should, and I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they start popping up as villains, or if there's a prestige or there's like 5e doesn't do prestige classes anymore. Lame. 5e, you're good for what you are. 3.5's better. Sorry, it's the truth. But the priests are like, it's a prestige class in 3.5. And the premise, the whole point of an priest is an evil priest that doesn't actually worship any particular god. What they do is they found some kind of magical ability to steal power from other gods. And that's what they do. They steal power from gods. They steal divine energy for their own purposes. And a lot of priests actually hate the gods and want to destroy them. And they want total freedom, but also the chaos that a world without gods would have. Again, as I'm a big fan of Jason Pallara and his role-playing games. For those of you who've checked out, I highly recommend Jason Pallara's role-playing games. Especially given the role-playing content I do here. Ivelands is Adam's Jason's friend on the site from Drop Dead Cynical. Ivelands is his game. And he's former Navy. So that's cool. I think he's current Navy. I'm not sure, but it's like, yeah. His Ivelands game is very, very good, and his whole bad guy in that campaign are the and that their whole dedication is to the annihilation of all gods. And in that campaign specifically, like, all the gods like fused into a single god, and they still want to annihilate God. So it's like they're the bad guys there. So effectively, Drownu was an priest, and he tried stealing power from Ra, and Ra, found out about it and cursed him and turned him into a vampire, which I think is an incredibly stupid thing to do. But I didn't write this. This is his character concept. It's like, I am Ra, the king of the Egyptian pantheon, a wise and omnipotent god. And you've betrayed me by trying to steal my power, so I'm going to turn you into an immortal monster who has the potential to become incredibly powerful and possibly hurt many innocent people and come back to haunt me someday. Not very smart. When he was creating the character, he specifically told me this character was a Methuselah. Now, I believe he was using this because an anime that had just came over on Adult Swim at the time that we were checking out and watching was Trinity Blood. and he was watching Trinity Blood, and so I believe that's why he decided to call himself a Methuselah. He was using the Trinity Blood version of Methuselah. Methuselah in Trinity Blood is just a generic term for vampire. It's what vampires cause themselves. For those of you who have not watched Trinity Blood, it's an anime series. The premise is it's in the future, and we've discovered vampires exist, and vampires have an entire nation. They have an entire, there's a whole chunk of Europe that are now just countries full of vampires. And we're on uneasy terms with them. There's kind of a cold war going on between humans and vampires, and the Catholic Church now has special warriors who fight them and whatnot, and that's kind of the geopolitical circumstances of Trinity Blood. So, but yeah, the common term for vampire is Methuselah. The problem is I'm a World of Darkness player, and Methuselah has a much different meaning in World of Darkness. Methuselah is a very, very powerful old vampire who is so old and so powerful they essentially have the power of a god. Methuselahs are so old and so powerful they can basically warp reality at will. They have unlimited magical spells or abilities that they can cause. They're almost as powerful as antediluvians. Antediluvians are the progenitors of the various clans, and they're like godlike vampires. They are like second in line to Cain. Cain being the first, the biblical Cain being the first vampire. All of his child are the antediluvians, and are the ones that created all the 13 clans, from which all the bloodlines and all the vampire clans in Vampire the Masquerade come from. So Methuselah is a loaded word said around me, and we were not clear on this. So I'm assuming you're a Methuselah, so you're a powerful vampire that has godlike powers and can warp reality. That wasn't apparently we did not understand each other. I was assuming this guy was running around with a powerful vampire that could do spells and could warp reality and could, probably take the Hulk and all the Avengers on by himself. And as far as Jared was concerned, his only real superpower as a vampire was he could turn into a swarm of undead scarabs. And this becomes important later on. So we're playing the game, and a lot of our sessions basically dissolved into this. That we would, and a lot of this had to do with having to deal with Rachel and how she role plays. Rachel's kind of a pussy. When things get rough, Rachel runs away. She doesn't it's like she's allegedly going on an adventure and is trying to save the day, but she runs from combat way too readily. Fucking coward. And again, one thing I point about role-playing games, a role-playing game is a very good way to psychoanalyze people. It's kind of her, a lot of, you could find out a lot about Rachel's mindset based off of the way she role-plays. She's very cowardly. And she'll let's adventure. The moment things get rough, run the fuck away. And so what essentially started happening was we kept on exploring these haunted houses. We started checking them out. We'd run into a couple ghosts. It would get a little too intense, and she's like, "Let's run away." We'd run away. We'd go explore the juvie center. Oh no, it got too scary. Let's run away. We explored the house that Jack built. Oh no, let's run away. And it kept doing that. And not only did it keep doing that, she then started doing this thing where she kept trying to research protection spells. And okay, so it should be important to know right now, I did not run this system in D20. I did not run this in Dungeons & Dragons, D20 or Pathfinder 3.5. I ran this in other Josh's system of role-playing games, which has it's its own system that he created. That's a little bit quicker and easier. And again, I'm going to leave that for him to reveal to the world at some point in time if he wants to talk about it. But basically, it's a completely different system, and it's meant to be a little bit more cinematic and a little bit more focused on combat. There's no there's no leveling up. It's like what do you want? What kind of powers do you want? You want those parts? Boom, you got them. You don't get any more. It's like if the story changes what you're capable of, then that's what happens. But basically, there's no. Malmoto's been very heavily critical of it because he likes a structure and a system where he likes being good at things, and he's argued like, oh well, in this system, like, a baby could save the day, a baby could like beat the most powerful boss ever, and it's like if you're running the system properly, that won't happen because you still have to follow logic, but it is dependent on having a good dungeon master who's in control of things and is kind of is handling things fairly. So it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it works for me and other Josh. So that's what we were using. So this is the type of thing where this whole practice of, I'm going to research protection magic before I go into the haunted building. And it's like, so like this action of I'm going to research protection magic is like basically 100% useless in the system. Because it's like you're not, like, all it's going to do is it's like, alright, you now know a protection spell. Good, you can make a little force field that keeps the ghost back. And all they have to do is win a roll to break through it. It's like it's not like it's going to give them, she's acting like it's going to give her like +3 to AC or something like that. It's like, there ain't no armor class in this game, lady. It doesn't work that way. The system does not work that way. It's like, so, and like every time she just kept running back, let's research protection magics. Let's research protection. I'm like, oh my fuck. And I'm just like, just go in the stupid haunted house and explore it. It's like, I built encounters, I built stuff, just go do it. Just go do it. But no, she kept on like stopping and like getting the party to go back and like try to research protection magic. And I'm like, okay, you research protection magic, do a roll. Okay, you got a spell, you can make a force field. It's like, do a roll. Okay, you didn't find anything new or different. Go, fuck you. It was like, it kept going back to that. So finally, there was one session where we were all there and we were exploring the Juvie Center. And Hunter Moongazer got attacked by one of those wall monsters I talked about earlier. The wall monsters came out and started menacing the party, and were fighting them, and they grabbed him at one point and sucked him into a wall. And Rachel decided to I think Rachel and I think it was Rachel, the Lich, everybody was there. Everybody was there except for Drownu had not shown up yet. Jared had not arrived yet at the game. So it was basically Hunter Moongazer, Aluma, the Lich, and Thaumaglorious the Dragon. And there was another player that had just kind of popped in and was playing with us temporarily, she was like a psychotic magic user with fairy wings. I forgot her name too. She had a couple sorcerer spells on her. And so she encountered this stuff, instantly got freaked out and just kind of ran away. We started getting attacked by monsters, so like they abandoned Hunter Moongazer to the Hell Dimension. And the Lich teleported them away, and they went to a Starbucks. They literally went to a Starbucks, like not too far away from HTC. So they teleported away, and again, Hunter Moongazer is a glorified NPC, so it's like, alright. So I did a couple rolls to figure out what had happened to my character. So they're just hanging out and talking at a Starbucks, and then all of a sudden, kicking the door open of the Starbucks is a half-on-fire, scratched-up Hunter Moongazer who's in his vampire form. Who is pissed the fuck off at the party for abandoning him and leaving him to die to demons. So he starts, with fangs bared and brandishing weapons. This character is now screaming at these weirdos that just showed up at the Starbucks, and is yelling at them, which is causing many people to freak out and start running out of the Starbucks. And then at that point, Drownu decided to show up. And Drownu decided to show up and make fun of Hunter Moongazer. Well, Hunter Moongazer is in no mood, and Hunter Moongazer didn't really trust the natural vampire to begin with. Again, Drownu, the way Jared played Drownu was he was very, very arrogant, very cocky, and constantly fucked with Hunter Moongazer and looked down on him for being a human. So he decided to start coming in and talking shit right now. Hunter, after being almost killed by demons, was in no mood, so Hunter pulled his shotgun and started shooting him. So we started fighting. Hunter starts, going into his wolf form and I started using all my... I whooped the ever-loving shit out of Drownu. We started fighting. Hunter kicked the crap out of Drownu. Aluma, the Lich, and Thaumaglorious once again run away from the Starbucks. And in the ensuing fight, I start lobbing fireballs and lightning bolts at him. I beat the shit out of Drownu, blast the crap out of him, knock him unconscious, and set the Starbucks on fire. Nobody died, but Hunter Moongazer did burn down a Starbucks. So the everybody got away. Nobody got caught. The former cop just burned down a place of business. And so from at that point, the adventure decided to go in this other direction where it's like they all met up at Aluma's. Aluma, being a vampire, is very old and very wealthy, so she has like a penthouse on like top of the Hilton, near West Shore and whatnot. So say basically they all met up at her penthouse. So it was Aluma, the Lich, Thaumaglorious, and Drelnu. And and several hours had passed, and then night had fallen. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. It's like I think like we were playing with the idea that basically both Aluma and Aluma, again, the vampire myth is always different depending on who you talk to. We were playing with the idea that basically when Hunter turns into a vampire, he's weakened. He starts burning in the sunlight because it's a temporary effect, and he's essentially turning himself into like a fledgling vampire. So he's got the basic powers of a vampire, but nothing more than that, and it's only temporary. So he actually does make him vulnerable to the sunlight at that point. Aluma and Drelnu are so old that the sunlight doesn't really hurt them or affect them that much. They're kind of weakened in the sunlight. They're weakened in the sunlight though, but they're not so they're stronger at night, but they don't burst into flames in the sun. So they're at her hotel, and they've decided to do research. So instead of doing anything in the games, instead of doing anything exciting, going on the adventure, they're gonna fucking do research. So, but night has fallen. A couple hours have passed. Hunter has had time to calm down. Hunter calls Aluma up on the cell phone and basically says, "Yeah, I'm really sorry about what happened today. I think I should just kind of keep my distance from you guys for a little bit. I'm gonna, you guys do research and figure out what you can. I'm gonna lay low for a couple days and calm down. I don't think I should be around you guys after what happened." So Hunter recuses himself from the situation. So that happens. So they all, they're just sitting in this fucking hotel room. They're sitting in this fucking hotel room, sitting around researching protection spells that are going to have almost no in-game effects whatsoever. They're wasting my fucking time. So yeah, Aluma's studying. It's like, do I get any protection spells? To roll. Oh, I got higher than you. All right, you got another protection spell. It's slightly stronger than the other one. It's like she's sitting there. You find basic protection spells. What do you want from me? She's researching protection spells. The Lich is reaching protection spells. Thaumaglorious is researching protection spells, and Drelnu is sitting there feeling like he's not useful. So Jared asks himself, "Well, what can I bring to the party? I don't know arcane magics that well. I don't know how to help in this situation. Oh, but I was a cleric. I know. I'll pray to the Egyptian gods. The gods I betrayed." So, yeah, so this is dumb. So he proceeds to start praying to Ra. And so I'm like, all right. So I did a couple rolls to see what would happen. So Ra responded, and Ra said, "Why are you praying to me? You betrayed me 1,000 years ago. Never talk to me again, or I will smite you." And it's like, oh, sorry. It's literally Ra responded to him in his head and basically said, "Why are you speaking to me? You betrayed me. You betrayed me long ago, and now you ask for my help. No, don't call me again." He decided to pray to Set. Set responded, like, "What? What do you want?" And it's like, Set's like, "Could you help us out right now?" It's like, I'm evil, and it's like, well, I'm a bad guy. Yeah, you suck. Set's response to him, Set actually responded, but Set's was you. Yeah, I mean, you're evil too, but you kind of suck, and you're of no use to me whatsoever. I mean, I'll talk to you, but go fuck yourself. It's so Set responded, but was of no help. I think he tried several of the other good Egyptian gods and got no response from them. And then finally, he prayed to Anubis and critically failed. So upon critically failing, the little statue of Anubis he's praying to suddenly starts growing larger and springs to life. And the god Anubis, the god of the dead of the Egyptian, the jackal-headed balancer of the scales, has now appeared before them, wielding a massive halberd, and looks down at him and is like, "You, Drownu, traitor of the gods, how dare you speak to the Egyptian gods? Now you will die." And he's pissed. He is pissed the fuck off. He is ready to kick his ass, and I'm happy because I'm bored as shit. And I'm like, yes, this is gonna be cool. The party now has to fight an Egyptian god, like Anubis, one of the most badass of the Egyptian gods. We're gonna fight a god. This is gonna be cool. I'm excited. Aluma immediately freaks the fuck out. Aluma immediately loses her shit, and I found out that basically there was a reason, because Rachel, the player playing Aluma, was in real life freaking out and losing her shit. I had no idea until later, but we'll get to that. So she freaks her shit, and she's like, no, Anubis, we mean you no harm, please don't hurt us. Boom! Anubis like backhands her and knocks her to the ground. It's like, silence, undead dog. I was running another role-playing game at the time called Macabre Champions, which I had started off as kind of an online role-playing game I was running like on a forum with a couple of friends, and which was again vampire themed and whatnot. And one of the Zach was one of the guys I was running that with. One of my players, Zach, had a concept of, he was playing a sort of modern day priest of Anubis, and the idea was that the cult of Anubis in modern times was incorporating like nanotechnology, and so he basically had like this nanotech spear he could summon that could shoot lasers and do all sorts of cool stuff. And the idea was that like it was nanotechnology that had been enhanced through magic. So he had all these, it was all this kind of like magitech sort of abilities that he had. And me and him kind of like sat and like he told me like the basic ideas of what the character could do, and then I gave him some other suggestions, and he wound up like augmenting and playing around with the character's abilities. And his character, another, he was a kid, he was like younger than me, but like, so he's another kid with an edgelord character, Vendetta, the priest of Anubis. Vendetta was a cool character. Macabre Champions was a lot of fun to play and run. I made a lot of good friends with that. Especially like Nick and Aaron, who I need to talk to again. We're friends on Facebook. I need to talk to you guys again, man. But we had a lot of fun playing that game. And in particular, like Zach came up with some really cool ideas for Vendetta. But one thing and I think his intention was that the head of the cult of Anubis was actually a con man who was was manipulating these people and getting them to become members of this cult, really just to rip them off and extort them. But like vampires were a real thing, and the cult of Anubis were like vampire hunters. And I think initially, his idea was the head of the cult was also genetically engineering himself to turn himself into kind of a living vampire. He would have the powers of a vampire, but he was not undead. He's like he still has a con score, but he has like an insane healing factor and feeds on blood and whatnot. And he was like his like main villain. He was going to be like the guy that was manipulating everything. And the cult of Anubis preached that all vampires were undead abominations, but it wasn't really Anubis that was behind it. His real intention was that Anubis was it was all bullshit. It was all bullshit. This guy was just manipulating these people and was using the nanotechnology to drive the members of the cult crazy and whatnot. And very early on, since he didn't tell me this, I started having him get visions from Anubis, and my intention was, no, Anubis is actually contacting him. And so we started talking about his backstory and whatnot, and it's like, yeah, no, dude, it's all bullshit. There's no real Anubis. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, here's the thing: that vision you got, that was not from the leader. That was not from your cult leader. That was actually from Anubis, because in my game, Anubis is real, and you've been in contact with him. So we started building this whole thing where Anubis was real, and the Egyptian gods were a real thing, and Anubis was using Vendetta to be his avatar, he had realized that people had revitalized his cult, the cult that worshipped him, but it was being revitalized by this asshole who was really just trying to manipulate people and do terrible things. And so Anubis was angry, and Anubis was reaching out to one of his most devout followers, Vendetta, to bring the cult back to like defending the Egyptian gods and protecting people and helping people and whatnot. And my idea was based off of his premise that like the doctrine preached that vampires must die, was that was actually true. And I had this idea that that Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead, hates undead. I came up with this idea that like my version of Anubis absolutely hates most forms of undead creature, especially vampires, because vampires make his job harder. Vampires, like when a person becomes a vampire, I was kind of playing with the whole another friend of mine, Nick and Aaron, I was hanging out with this during this role-playing game. They got me into Legacy of Kain. They got me into the Soul Reaver and and like a lot of the Legacy of Kain series. And we were talking about Legacy of Kain a lot of times and like a lot about the lore with that. And if you played Legacy of Kain, you know that part of the reason Raziel is turned into the Soul Reaver is the Elder God cannot feed on vampire. Like the Elder God is a glutton of souls, and convinces Raziel that, oh, I'm part of a natural process. Souls need to come to me so I can eat them, so that way they can be recycled, which is bullshit. He just wants to eat souls. He's a great old one that wants souls for breakfast, and he's using Raziel as his agent to do that. And he specifically tells him to go kill Cain. Cain betrayed you. Go kill vampires. And his reason being is that when a person becomes a vampire, their soul winds up trapped inside that person's body, and they exist. That soul is taken out of the circle, the natural circle of life, for an inordinate amount of time due to the unnatural prolonging of that person's life due to being an immortal vampire. So, by Raziel killing vampires and absorbing their souls, he's allegedly allowing them to be recycled back into the wheel of the cycle of reincarnation. By doing that, like by being eaten by Raziel, they're being consumed by the Elder God to be recycled. And of course, again, the Elder God's bullshitting. The Elder God just wants to eat souls. The Elder God don't care if they get recycled or not. So my idea was that that's what's happening here too. When a person becomes a vampire, their soul is trapped inside of their body and cannot be collected by Anubis. Anubis cannot collect their soul and weigh their spirit naturally and allow them to be judged and give them their eternal reward or eternal damnation. He cannot do that. He cannot balance their soul, and so he hates vampires and wants vampires destroyed because they are cheating. And he's still a good god, so if he runs into a good vampire, he's kind of like, I don't like you. But, fine, at least you're not hurting people. But that's the other thing, too. Vampires are spread like a plague. They spread out and sire other people, and they make it impossible for more souls to be judged. They punish and hurt humanity. He don't like them. He don't like zombies either. Zombies spread like a plague and zombies give him too much work. Zombies just they spread like a plague and saying, oh my god, I got a ton of souls to collect now. And also they make people suffer and hurt. Ghosts and wraiths he doesn't like them because they are hanging around on Earth when they should be moving along. They're not moving along. They're refusing to move along, and they're difficult. And it's eventually he's got to go get them. It's no, it's your time. Get over here. It's your time. And he's got to try to get them to be judged. The only type of undead that Anubis is cool with are mummies. It's the only type he's cool with. He's cool with mummies because that's part of the ancient Egyptian tradition. That's that this is a pharaoh. This is a person experienced their eternal life, experiencing their immortality. He has no problem with that. That's fine. That's perfectly equitable. But so I had this idea that Anubis does not like undead, and this was carrying over into this game. So Anubis basically has upon the ancient traitor of Dralnu coming forth and attempting to contact him and angering him. So it's I will kill, I'm coming here to kill Dralnu, and then discovering the room is 75% undead. Anubis is I see you have other undead cohorts, a lich and another vampire. You will all die. I will destroy you and take your souls to be judged. And so he's gonna kill everybody in the fucking room as long as they are continuing to help Dralnu. So like Illuma's on the ground, like, please, no, we're not gonna help him, we're not gonna help him. Fine, stay out of this, otherwise you will be judged and destroyed. So the action begins. We roll initiative. This prompts the Alex, who's playing the Lich, to say, okay, it's my turn. I'm gonna cast a spell. I resurrect myself, and then I run away. So I told other Josh this like a week later, and I told this, and he starts laughing, and he's like, okay, so let me get this straight. He takes a bunch of magic powder and throws it over his head, and he's like, I'm alive again! And then he runs away. It's like, that's basically what happened. He's just like, poof, I'm alive! I'm alive again! And run away. So he's now like he's now a human spellcaster. He's now like he's now just a mage. He's alive again. So he casts a spell, runs the fuck away. Thaumaglorious runs the fuck away. Illuma runs the fuck away. They go to the roof. More on them later. Yeah. So, meanwhile, Jared believes that I'm just trying to kill his character at this point. And there's no way he can get out of the situation. So he's like, all right, fine. If I'm gonna die, then I'm gonna die fighting. And it's like, fine. Like you're gonna come and kill me. Bring it on. So I'm happy. I've got like a powerful Methuselah, godlike vampire versus an actual god. We're gonna have this titanic fight, just here in the sky of Tampa. Just like super vampire versus god smashing each other. It's gonna be freaking awesome. It's gonna be great. I'm so excited. But again, I'm assuming this character is a Methuselah with godlike, I can make space-time get high powers. Jared is under the impression that all he can do is turn into fucking scarabs. So they fight. So they smash the window and they start fighting in the sky. And the very first thing that happens is Drownu turns into a swarm of scarabs and swarms over Anubis. Anubis responds by using laser eyes to destroy all but 3 scarabs. So that was my opening move. Anubis successfully destroys all the scarabs, about 3 of them. Now again, I'm under the impression that Drownu is a very, very powerful vampire that can just instantaneously reform himself, and or kind of instantaneously heal and turn into or warp reality, so he's just back into his normal form and has an arsenal of other spells at his disposal. Jared, on the other hand, thinks that he's fucked now. Jared is under the impression like, oh no, I'm just 3 scarabs now. So at no point in time does he use this. And again, I'm the dungeon master. As far as I'm concerned, he has this fucking power. He can do this instantly. Poof. He is more than a match for Anubis. He could just start punching him. He could start casting powerful magic. He could do illusions. He is perfectly capable of holding his own against a god. But no, he never does it. He just assumes he's fucked. He is 3 scarabs now, and that's all he can do. And so he just starts flying around and starts just biting the crap out of Anubis. And at this point, he started winning. Now, I was trying to be a fair dungeon master. I was like, he had great rolls. He did fine. I think it's now an important point to kind of go back to reality for a minute. So meanwhile, in the real world, I got Alex and Bob laughing their asses off, and I've got Rachel freaking the fuck out, and I don't know why, but she's literally just absolutely mortified by the preceding events. She's watching what's going on. Oh my god, you fucking idiot! She's super pissed at Jared right now. She's super pissed at everything he's freaking doing. And she's wondering, why aren't you just killing him? He's down to 3 scarabs. Why aren't you just... He's fighting a god. There's nothing he can do. And it's I'm trying to be fair. This is a fair fight, and on the same time, it's he's perfectly capable of beating this character. So it's and he kept winning. So basically, at this point, Anubis is swatting at him with the halberd, or trying to punch him or blast him with his powers, and he just keeps missing, and the scarabs fly up and bite the crap out of him, and he's knocking them off. And he's a god, so they're not doing a whole lot of damage, but they're biting him and annoying him. And the thing about Jared is, when Jared starts feels like he's being when he feels like he's being targeted, or by someone like unfairly, he starts or especially like in combat when he's playing a game and he's like losing, he tries to humiliate his opponent. He starts doing things to like deliberately humiliate his opponent. It's this weird, stupid, childish thing he does. So after winning a couple times and biting the crap out of Anubis, he decides to fly up Anubis's ass and bite the crap out of him. And again, I probably should have just said no, and I probably should, you know what, you just die. I was trying to be fair, and guess what? He won his role. He flew up Anubis' ass and started biting in the inside of Anubis' ass. Again, Anubis is a god, so it doesn't hurt that much. It's a little embarrassing, and Anubis is like, really? So there's a scarab inside his butt biting the crap out of him. Back to reality, Rachel freaks the fuck out. Rachel runs to her room. Now, again, we're into this kind of supernatural stuff. Rachel was into witchcraft. She was into, like, Wiccan, and she had, like, an altar in her room with a bunch of, like, crystals and crap on it that she was kind of using and would occasionally try to, do witchy things. And on her altar is a statue of the Egyptian god of Bastet, the cat goddess, who I believe was a god of concubines and love, but she was also the cat god that would ride with Ra-Horkate into the 12 hours of night and fight the giant snake Apep while they tried to rescue souls from the 12 hours of night. And also there's a little dish with, I think it's like an incense dish, but it's got 3 little statues of Anubis that are holding it up, and she keeps it there. And so she does actually revere the Egyptian gods to some degree. Bastet more than Anubis, but she does, since Anubis is on there, she does revere Anubis. Now, again, but yeah, I still feel like, again, I was under the impression at the time, young and stupid, that my friend Rachel is sane and is not crazy and is and knows full well that the Egyptian pantheon is just, they are mythical. They are not real. They are fictional characters. They're cool characters. They're awesome cultural characters, but they're not, they're like, people typically don't worship the Egyptian pantheon in modern times. And look, they have a stat block in Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, they're standard monsters. So it's like, but like they're, I was like, but apparently, no. Apparently, what was happening in real life was Rachel was genuinely mortified by the proceedings because she genuinely does revere Anubis and feels like we were disrespecting the Egyptian gods. So she runs to her room, goes to her altar, grabs her Anubis dish, brings it out, and puts it in front of her and starts praying to Anubis and saying, I'm sorry. I am very sorry about all this. I respect you. Please, I am sorry about this. I'm sorry about humiliating you right now. I'm laughing my ass off because I don't realize that she's genuinely offended right now. So okay, it gets better. So naturally, so Dralnu, one of Dralnu's scarabs has flown up Anubis' butt and is biting the crap out of him. So my attack at that point was, okay, Anubis clenches. He clenches his butt cheeks, crushes the scarab from the inside out, poops you out. So he kills one of the other scarabs. And so shortly after that, I finally killed Dralnu. I swatted, I think I blasted one more of the scarabs, and I finished the last one off by swacking with the halberd. I killed Dralnu. Dralnu quite literally went to hell after this. Dralnu popped up later on in another game I was running in hell. But that is a story for another day. That was interesting. But so that's what happened. And meanwhile, back to the rest of the party. The rest of the party, meanwhile, has run to the roof once the fighting started. So once the fighting started, they ran to the roof. Thaumaglorious transforms into his dragon form. They jump onto his back, and they just fly east. And they don't stop. They fly across Florida. They fly across the Atlantic Ocean. They fly across the Atlantic at a northeasterly angle to England. To Scotland, specifically. So that's what they do. But I had to do some rolls because this is modern times, and they are on a dragon flying across the Atlantic Ocean. They failed their rolls. They were noticed. Yeah, they flew over the ocean, and yeah, the Navy was out there, and the Navy noticed a strange dragon-shaped object flying over the Atlantic Ocean. So, yeah, that comes back to haunt them later. So part of the reason why I was telling this to Oxenius and Nick and everybody at Horde of the Dragon Queen was because this whole story, what prompted this whole story is, this is actually the origin story of Nobu Totoro. Nobu Totoro was originally one of Jared's characters, but under a different name, which I'll get into in a minute. So basically, I just killed off Duralnu. Like, alright, Jared, make another character. So Jared makes another character. So he actually created Nobu Totoro. But he didn't call him Nobu Totoro. Nobu Totoro was my name for this character because the name he came up with the character was fucking stupid. He called him Nabutata. Nabutata because it sounds dumb and, like, Jared doesn't understand Japanese or how to make a Japanese name. So, that's why I decided to give the character an actual Japanese name based off that original one. So his original premise for Nobutotoro, Nabutata, was that he was a samurai. He was like a modern day samurai who had been like training at a monastery his entire life and had actually managed to achieve enlightenment and go into a state of nirvana, but on Earth, and had actually achieved that. And by doing that, he was capable of superhuman feats. He was capable of pushing his body to unnatural limitations. He was able to kind of perceive reality as it truly is, and was able to manipulate things. And his idea was that basically this was a samurai character that could do stuff that like Neo could do from the Matrix. So he was capable of superhuman strength, speed, agility, and stamina because he was able to push his body beyond normal limitations, and he was able to incorporate all this into his sword fighting abilities. He was also capable of flying. He was able to fly like Superman, like Neo did. Now the problem was both Rachel and Jared are super into bullshit pot smoking philosophy. Rachel would go on at length about how she attended like one college course where she had a philosophy class, and the philosophy teacher said, hey, prove this table exists. And she was like, I can't prove that it exists. There's no proof that exists. And she prides herself so much about how she did that one basic friggin' philosophical observation. And she would go on, and we would have constant pot-fueled freaking debates about like the nature of reality. It's like, if I don't believe, it may be possible, like, if I don't believe this table's really there, then I could just pass through the table. And I'm like, yeah. No, Rachel. It doesn't matter how much you don't believe that there's not a table there, you're still going to hit a table. It doesn't matter how much you don't believe a wall's there, you're still not going to be able to walk through it. Because just because human senses are limited and we can't 100% perceive everything around us, doesn't mean they're worthless. Doesn't mean, even though we are a bunch of blind men grasping and touching an elephant in the darkness, and just because we don't have the full picture of what the elephant is, doesn't mean we're wrong when we're saying, well, I think it's like long like a snake. Oh, I think it's like smooth like smooth and pointed. Well, I think it's like hard like a tree. Well, I think it's like wide like the hippopotamus. We're all seeing. We may have limits to our perception, but our perception still matters for something. And when we deduce things scientifically, it does actually mean something. So sometimes, if I'm touching a table or touching a wall and I can't move through it, I may have limited human senses, but maybe my senses are telling me that there's a fucking wall there. So, yeah. Anyway, Jared bought into this bullshit too. He had just seen the fucking Matrix. So he was all like, dude, man, reality's totally not what we perceive to be, man. Dude. He was all into that bullshit. So upon character creation, he was trying to bullshit me and tell me, it's like, oh man, I can do all sorts of crazy stuff because I can perceive. He was basically telling me, the Dungeon Master, that we're in a Matrix game now. We're in the Matrix. And that he doesn't reality is really something else and really something different. And I'm like, no, asshole, this is my game. You are not in the Matrix. You are not in a tube somewhere in the Machine City. There is no Zion. There is no Morpheus or Neo, because we are not playing a Matrix game. It's like, yes, you have the ability to perceive reality greater than a normal person can. You are capable of doing superhuman feats, but you cannot see the code, Neo. No. So I had to slap him down right there and say, no, fucker, that's not how your fucking powers work. So they land in Scotland. They land on like the cliffs, like on the shores of Scotland, and they're like, we're away from Anubis. Everything's cool. And then his character shows up, Nabutata, or Nobu, as I'm calling the character now, and just is for years later when I took the character and I'm like rationalizing it and kind of like using it for my own story, my idea was he had recently completed his training and decided to set out and see the world, and he wound up traveling to Scotland and traveling to England, and this was his first adventure, his first clearly long and thorough adventure, all 5 minutes of it. So I didn't take a drink just now. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I just pick up a drink and not drink it. That's fucking weird. This whole thing is weird. This whole show is weird. Anyway, so he shows up and sees a fucking dragon and two weird people getting off the dragon, and he's like, oh, that looks cool. Hello, good sirs. I am Nabutata. I am a wandering samurai. How are you? The problem is, in real life, Rachel is fucking pissed at Jared. Rachel is pissed at Jared. Rachel wants nothing to do with Jared. Rachel's like, fuck you, Jared. And Rachel has no tolerance for Jared's bullshit character. So upon him walking up and like, hello, good sirs, I am a wandering samurai, how are you? Aluma, like, vaults on Nabutata, or Nabu, and is all like, fuck you! Fuck you! Just go fuck yourself! Fuck, get the fuck, it's like, but, like, is there something wrong? Do you need help? No, we don't need help! Fuck you, go fucking, don't take your sword and shove it up your ass! Fuck, jump off a cliff! Fuck you, go fuck yourself! It's like, okay, sorry. And he walks away. So ends the first adventure of Nobu Totoro. After training and learning, achieving enlightenment, he wandered Scotland and met a vampire lady, and she told him to fuck off. And he walked away. And that is the first adventure of the character I'm playing, or was playing in Horde of the Dragon Queen. I like, again, Jared had good ideas for role-playing, and I feel like the character concept was cool, so much so I decided to take the character and use him for other things, which I'll go into at the end of this video. Yeah, so that's what happened. Rachel's character told Jared's character to fuck off because she's mad at him for realsies. And at that point, the Navy, the Army, the British Air Force, just basically the English and American armed forces just descended upon this cliff and had finally caught up, and they're suddenly surrounded by tanks and planes and soldiers and, like, training their eye on the dragon. They are fucking surrounded by the military because they got spotted. Essentially, the mage, I think the mage, like, poofed. He teleported away. He, like, just poofed and got out of there. Alright, I can't help them right now. I'm just gonna go. He had a lair. He had a mage's lair somewhere, so he just teleported himself out and got to safety. Meanwhile, Thaumaglorious is like, I'm not a bad dragon. I'm a nice dragon. I don't want to hurt anybody. Just, like, he kind of puts his claws up. It's like, everything's cool, man. Everything's cool. And at that point, Aluma attempted to hide, and Aluma attempted to turn into a cat, so no one would notice her. But then I caught her talking in her cat form, and just shut up and don't do anything stupid, Thaumaglorious, or something like that. And the soldiers are like, did that cat just talk? No, I didn't. No, I didn't have a cat. And it's like, it's like, what's that? Meow. And it's like, so I had her do a roll, like a bluff check. It's like, no, they saw you talking, so they tase her and knock her unconscious. So the session ends with Aluma and Thaumaglorious being captured by the military and being taken off somewhere to be studied, and that's how we ended for the night. The moment we end for the night, all hell breaks loose as Rachel just starts screaming at Jared. Screaming at Jared and mouthing off to him, and basically just like fuck you, how could you fucking do that, you're a fucking idiot. And like she's screaming at him, it's like, I hate you, I never want to see you again, get the fuck out of my house. And so the two of them are arguing with each other. It's like, I'm sorry, what did I do wrong? So they're yelling at each other, and then I got involved in it because I'm wondering, like, if I did something wrong. So she's just getting mad at me, like, why did you let him do this? Why did you let him freaking, like, humiliate Anubis? It's like, I gotta be fair. What are you talking about? It's like so me and her get into a fight. So we all leave pissed off. So, we all leave pissed off, and so for like the next couple days, it's like me and her were talking, and eventually me and her made up, and she explained that really she was pissed at Jared, because she reveres Anubis and she felt like he was humiliating him, but at the same time, this is another problem with Rachel as well. Like Rachel was like one of the things that Rachel started arguing with me about that night was like, I would never, like if I'm gonna get captured, I'd rather have my character kill myself than do that. So yeah, Malmoto can relate to this too. Malmoto ran a game with her where he was trying to run like a Shadowrun game, or like I want to say it was either Shadowrun or it was like a spycraft type game where basically she was supposed to be like a mercenary, and her and the other character, and I think his girlfriend at the time, botched a mission and they were captured and they were sent to prison. And then they were going to stay in prison for a while, and then I think they were going to be like put in, like they were going to like be put in cryostasis and then wake up in like a future time and get released from jail or something like that. There was something to that effect, and she was like, well, if I'm going to go to jail, then I would just rather kill myself than go to jail. And so much like how Rachel very cowardly runs away from combat. If things don't go her way, she'd rather have her character commit suicide. If her character's ever going to wind up in prison, instead of figuring out a way to get herself out of prison, she decides to pout until she gets her way. She starts giving ultimatums. She's like, well, if you're going to put my character in jail, I'm just going to kill my character off. Which is kind of, again, this is a very interesting psychological note. It's very, it makes me wonder too. It's like, like they say that, like sometimes suicide can be related to that. Where like suicide is like, some people have the attitude that life is a game, and they commit suicide when they're tired of playing. Well, the problem is it's the only game you play. It's not a game. It's the only, as far as you know, it's the only life we get, and that's why suicide is highly discouraged. The choice to end one's life is not considered a favorable one. So it's kind of, again, role-playing games are an interesting psychological experiment, so it's kind of interesting to note stuff like that. So she started arguing that I'd rather have my character just die than if that's going to happen. So I'm like, no, like you're going to jail, and you're going to be in prison. Yeah, she was all upset that basically it's like, oh, now she's been exposed as a vampire, so she can't enjoy her life anymore. She can't just like feed normally as a vampire would, so she'd rather just kill herself. It was like she basically started giving me an ultimatum, and I'm like, okay. And I was expecting her. It's like, well, I'm expecting, and again, it's interesting. Just because I have standards for my players, I expect my players to deal with whatever they are given, and whatever problems I throw at them, and I expect them to figure it out. This is your problem. This is the challenge you're in. Figure it out. Find a way to cope. Find a way to deal. That's why I was like that's why when running that thing with Snowman for the Star Wars, that terrible Star Wars session I ran, I really wanted him to like, all right, you're in jail now, so find a way to get out of prison. And I was really disappointed with him, where it's like, yeah, it's just like, you like, why can't we just restart? Oh, it'll be better next time, and then he winds up in the exact same situation again. It's like, it's part of the being sent to prison is something that can happen on an adventure, and now you need to find a way to, how do you deal with that? How do you? That's the thing that can happen in life, and I mean, it's horrible. Going to prison is a horrible thing, but it's especially in terms of it telling us, like, it's like, how do you cope with that? What do you do? It's a challenge that a lot of people have to deal with. Whether they deserve to go to prison or not. Sometimes people are wrongly accused, especially like in like war zones and whatnot. It's like this is a problem, and in an adventure, all right, you're in jail now. You've been captured. What do you do about it? Do you break free? Do you wait for the right opportunity? It's part of the adventure. You've been abducted by, you're going to be experimented on by the government. Why don't you toughen up and do that? No, not her. She gives ultimatums. I'm not going to play. Well, fine, I'm not going to play then. And it's like, all right, bye. It's the type of thing now, Malmoto and I were talking about it the other day, where we were ever faced with that crap again. It's like, all right, bye. Your character's dissected in a lab. Your character gets the chair. Your character, is now the bride of a rough trick named Jim. It's like, I don't care no more. But it was like, yeah. So we made up a couple days later, and Malmoto expresses this too. He had the exact same issue with her, where he was trying to be agreeable, so he compromised the story to make her happy, to try to be a friend. And so he's reached a point where he's not going to do that anymore. And I don't blame him. And I did it too. Basically, she reveals that she was really mad at Jared for his whole Anubis shenanigans. And yeah, that was what was really going on. Yeah, that was what was happening. So like we made up, and then because we made up and she was still upset about that, I was trying to be nice too. So I came up with some kind of bullshit explanation to get her out of it. That like, what had happened was, Thaumaglorious was, didn't have any qualms about being exposed and revealing to the world dragons are real. So somehow she got out of the situation, she got away, and maybe because Thaumaglorious basically took the rap for her, and Thaumaglorious basically agreed to kind of look, I'll come quietly, and yeah, I'll explain myself, and he basically just he allowed scientists to study him for a time, and he just was interviewed and was revealed to the world, yeah, I'm a dragon, and dragons are real, and I'm nice. And he became a little bit of a celebrity as a result. He went on talk shows as Thaumaglorious the Dragon, and people know about dragons now. So I kind of did that for him. Meanwhile, Rachel refused to see Jared. She refused to interact with him whatsoever. She was like, fuck that guy, I don't want anything to do with him. And meanwhile, I'm friends with both of these fuckers. So I'm in the fucking middle. So I'm hanging out with her sometimes, basically, but then other times he's coming over to my house, and the entire time he comes over and he just fucking cries. He freaking comes to my apartment and just cries like, oh, I miss Rachel. I want to hang out. I want to be around her. He's going on. I can't. She's such a good friend. I want to be around her. And it's all fucking bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. He just wanted to sleep with her. That's all it was. That's all it was. He was very lascivious. He was just mad he couldn't be around her and couldn't eventually get shot at or snatch. That's all it was. That's all it was. It was total bullshit, and it was very awkward for me, where I had to be in the middle of this whole thing. I did learn something from it that I think is positive. Whereas I kind of realized, if you ever in a situation where you got two friends that don't get along and you both want to role play, and you're in this situation, what I decided to do for them was I decided to run two different versions of the same game. I decided to, and it kind of fell apart eventually, because eventually I stopped hanging out with one. I think I stopped hanging out with both of them in the long run anyway, because I got sick of their shit and I got sick of them being crazy. I basically reached a point where I was like, I would run two completely different. I decided to split the haunted universe in two. I decided to create a tangential universe where it's like, okay, I'm gonna have one version of the game where Rachel can play, one version of the game where Jared can play, and Alex and Bob have options of playing both. In fact, for each different game, they can play different characters. So I basically, I thought that was a good idea, just kind of keep the peace. It was like, all right, I created this thing. I'll create two scenarios, so I can play this. I don't have to kick either person out of the game. I can basically create, run two versions of this game at the same time to kind of keep everybody happy. And so I did that for a little while, and that worked out. And that was a little skill I wound up developing. It's something I find a lot of people aren't willing to do. It gets awkward a lot of times. And years later, when Jared walked back into our lives, and he met Melmoto for the first time, he put me in a situation where I was once again playing something inappropriate for a Dungeons & Dragons game. I believe it was a Predator, from the Predator movies. And Melmoto and his girlfriend were a little uncomfortable about it, and they wanted to talk to me about it. It's like, hey, dude, I'm not cool with you playing a sci-fi character in a fantasy game. But instead of that happening, they initially told Jared about it. So Jared decided to kick my character out of the game, and he did this on New Year's Eve too. And we were all talking, we were all hanging out, we were all excited. We were going to play D&D on New Year's Eve. I was going to hang out with my friends. I was all excited to see them. And then he drops this bomb on me that you can't play the character, and he got really confrontational. And they just I was all excited to play with them, and they just dropped this bomb on me that we can't play, and it just pissed me off for the whole freaking night. I didn't talk to them for 2 months. I didn't talk to the group for 2 months after that, At which point, like, Malmoto called me out of nowhere and said, like, yeah, hey, dude, we're sick and tired of Jared. We kicked him the fuck out. Fuck that guy. Come back, man. I believe what was really going on was Jared was basically doing what he always does. He was manipulating the situation because prior to that, I had stopped talking with him for a long time due to him being crazy. And I had recently run into him again, and I'd forgiven him. I'd given him a second chance. And I believe what he was really doing in revenge for me not talking to him for a long time, he decided to, like, basically split me up from my old friends. And so he deliberately made that situation worse than it was so he could get me out of the equation. He could kick me out of that circle of friends. And in the end, he got himself kicked out of it. And, you know, for that matter, Rachel got kicked out of that too. So it's like, yeah, it's interesting. I met Malmoto through Rachel. And I met a bunch of her friends after not talking to her for a long time until that tragedy occurred in her family. And in the end, I took her friends because me and all of her friends got sick and tired of her shit. And yeah, so they're now my friends. And so that is in short why we don't hang out with Rachel or Jared anymore. And again, like this whole alias thing is probably gonna fall apart in a couple of videos, but whatever. For the time being, I don't feel like speaking by their real names. But yeah, that's the Anubis incident. That's what happened, and that is actually the creation of the Nobu Totoro character, which I took from. Again, I like the concept, and I was playing around with this old. When I first found the TSR Marvel Superheroes character, I started running some of the modules, just kind of myself, just kind of playing around with it, and I brought that character back, and had it go on the scenario and whatnot. So I've written like a whole story where like Nobu Totoro like went to New York City and encountered the X-Men, and like teamed up with had a conversation with Magneto and discovered that Kang the Conqueror had stolen Wolverine from back when he was in his Weapon X days and had brought him to modern times to be to turn him into like sort of like a minion of his. And so Nobu and Magneto and the X-Men all teamed up to fight Kang the Conqueror. And there was other wacky things I was playing around with in that game. Like one of the characters they encountered was Phalus from Phalus.com, formerly Channel Awesome. And I was because again I'm a giant I still am kind of a giant Channel Awesome nerd, so it's like so I was getting into like the whole I used to get into their dumb stories, so it was like I had like one of the characters I had running around was Phalus and complete with his I had him running around in the Ghostbusters uniform and he had like his like time travel house, and so I think the adventure ended. They chased like Kang the Conqueror back into like dinosaur times through his house, and they fought him and a bunch of dinosaurs. So that's the previous adventures of Nobu Totoro. But like, yeah, I like the character enough that I decided, and there's not much there. It's just a kind of a basic character premise that I decided to take the character and use it for my own games, and I brought it back in Horde of the Dragon Queen. But yeah, that's the Anubis incident, and again, it's like there's so much there. There's so much there. It's again, I feel I must reiterate again that role-playing can be fun. Role-playing can be a great storytelling experience, but it's also the people you interact with. A lot of times the stories that can be so much more interesting. And again, the big lesson that anybody that listens to this I want you to take home from is like, this applies to role-playing, but this applies to anything. Don't associate with people you don't like or don't trust. Part of my issue was I love role-playing games a lot, and I've been addicted to them. I still arguably am addicted to them. And a lot of times, I wanted to role play. And so I would role play with whoever. Especially when it comes to role playing, don't just role play with whoever. Make sure whoever you're role playing with are good people. Make sure they're not fucking crazy. Make sure they're people that you can trust. Because you might wind up in a situation where you're dealing with crazy people. Or you're surrounding yourselves with bad people that are bad for you. That are just not going to help you, are just not going to be good for you. Make sure you role-play with your friends, or you role-play with people you trust, people you care about. That's really the lesson from it. Of course, if nothing else, from hanging out with Rachel and Jared, I got some good stories, and I got some wacky stories of these crazy people I used to hang out with in my youth. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dreadpirate once again, and this is my best war story. I may try a couple more of these. I got a bunch of others. Like, I have so many freaking war stories talking about Rachel and Jared, about crazy shit they do. like I'm thinking about telling about like maybe the next one I'll talk about is the invisible girlfriend. But I think that will wait for another time. But in the meantime, I just felt like talking about this one. So yeah, this is the Dreadpirate saying, stay scared, especially if you have crazy friends who either date invisible people or revere Egyptian deities to the point of it'll ruin a friendship over it. So don't role play in abandoned hospitals, people. Don't do that. So have a good night, folks. I'll see you all next time.